Marshall Peak, Chapter 47:15, Grand Dragon. Under the leadership of the Golden Divine Dragon and the White Ice Phoenix, the divine spirits of various clans that suffered heavy casualties previously began fighting even more vigorously against the Black Giant Spirit God. The Giant Spirit God showed neither joy nor sorrow. He simply went on a silent killing spree. Divine spirits died one after another, their vitality completely erased. The blood of divine spirits rained down and watered the ground. Finally, the powerful giant spirit god stumbled. The golden grand dragon that was over 100,000 meters long swooped down from high above, shaking his head and flicking his tail. His enormous body wrapped around the giant spirit god firmly to restrict his movements. Likewise, the white ice phoenix swiftly swooped down from above, her sharp talons clasping onto the giant spirit god's physique tightly. One after another, the sacred treasures that exuded monstrous power were summoned by the various divine spirit clans. Their auras were closely connected to each other. The sacred treasures included the Dragon Clan's Crystal Palace, the Phoenix Clan's Immortal Parasol Tree, the Kuan Clan's Northern Deep, the Golden Crow Clan's Fusang Divine Tree. The 16 sacred treasures formed a grand array, causing the world to split apart in an instant. At the same time, the ancestral strength condensed together and gigantic chains took shape. These chains pierced the giant spirit god's body and immobilized him. Afterward, all the divine spirits quickly retreated while the dragon roared and the phoenix wailed. When the divine spirits looked back, all they saw was the scene of the world shattering apart. All the blood essence in the golden grand dragon and the white ice phoenix burst into flames and transformed into a powerful force of imprisonment that suppressed the giant spirit god on the spot. The black giant spirit god was too overpowering, so much so that even the divine spirits were unable to kill him. The golden divine dragon and the white ice phoenix were nowhere to be seen. Only a small golden radiance and a small white light flickered amidst the void turbulence before vanishing out of sight. Yang Kai woke up the next moment. 3 years had gone by in the blink of an eye. When he opened his eyes again, he felt as though he had experienced a very long dream and for a time, he could not break out of his reverie. He spent a long time in a daze before he finally recalled the last part of his dream. He seemed to have witnessed the scene of the black giant spirit god being suppressed and sealed. It was something the Dragon Clan's Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Clan's Phoenix Empress had done at the expense of burning their blood essence and sacrificing themselves. Only the strongest divine dragons of the Dragon Clan could receive the title of Dragon Emperor. Only the strongest masters of the Phoenix Clan had the right to be titled Phoenix Empress. Following the deaths of the Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Empress, their sources were swept up by the void turbulence caused by the splitting of the ancestral land and vanished without a trace. In this way, the sources that Yang Kai and Su Yang obtained back at Tongxian Realm were the inheritances of this Dragon Emperor and Phoenix Empress. The reason Yang Kai saw these memories in that dreamlike state was clearly related to the Dragon Emperor's source. The source strength was the inheritance left behind from the battlefield back then after all. Qing Luan was right. Each clan's sacred treasure represented their inheritance, it was just that the inheritance was not hidden within the sacred treasures themselves. On the contrary, each divine spirit's bloodline contained their respective inheritances, and they would naturally be revealed when their bloodline reached a certain level of purity. Cultivating with the help of their respective clan's sacred treasure simply made it easier to stimulate the inheritance in their bloodline. If Yang Kai had not cultivated in the Crystal Palace, he would never have seen these memories. At this point in time, the truth of what actually happened in the far past had been lost to history. Although Yang Kai had seen snippets of what happened when the giant spirit god was suppressed and sealed through his source inheritance, the reason behind such a ferocious battle between the giant spirit god and the divine spirits remained a mystery. On the other hand, he now understood the origins of his golden divine dragon source and Su Yang's ice phoenix source. Shaking his head to get rid of the distracting thoughts, Yang Kai examined his body. All the ancestral spirit crystals he took out earlier were nowhere to be seen, so it was obvious that they had been refined and absorbed. As a result, his body had grown again. He was now 9,999 meters long. He was just one step away from becoming a grand dragon. Unfortunately, it would seem that this final step was not so easy to overcome. If this were 3 years ago, he might have been helpless in the face of this problem, However, the long dream had made him aware of quite a fair amount of the Dragon Clan's inheritance. Among them included the Dragon Clan's cultivation techniques. As for how to take the final step, he already had a plan. Reclining on his back in the Crystal Palace, Yang Kai took out another handful of ancestral spirit crystals. This time around, he did not place the ancestral spirit crystals around him and instead stuffed them directly into his mouth. Following the crunching sounds, the rock-hard ancestral spirit crystals were swallowed into his belly and an enormous energy erupted in the next moment. Yang Kai continued to devour the ancestral spirit crystals endlessly, and it was not until he used up nearly 80% of them that he stopped. The amount of ancestral strength accumulated in his body was indescribably large by now, and this energy stimulated his dragon vein greatly. The mysterious dragon language sounded from Yang Kai's mouth, and at the same time, he activated the power of his dragon source, supplemented by the Dragon Clan's cultivation technique, to refine the ancestral strength and enhance his bloodline. Yang Kai gradually felt a searing heat below his jaw. It felt like a scorching iron brand was pressing against him. The discomfort caused him to shake his head vigorously. The huge half-dragon head knocking against the walls of the Crystal Palace, causing loud rumbles to reverberate through the air. With the passage of time, the scorching heat below his jaw became more and more noticeable. All the power of the dragon vein in his body seemed to be gathering in that spot, and Yang Kai vaguely sensed that something amazing was forming beneath his jaw. All of a sudden, the energy fluctuations reached a peak and a thunderous roar exploded in Yang Kai's mind as his entire being suddenly became clear-headed. Beneath his jaw, a round bead of condensed source strength came into being *catcher, star. His huge body that had been stagnant at 9,999 meters suddenly swelled slightly at this moment, and he abruptly crashed through the 10,000 meters threshold. He had given birth to a dragon bead and became a grand dragon. Opening his mouth, Yang Kai let out a roar. At this moment, he felt as though he had shed his former body and been reborn. Both his body and mind were cleansed by a strange baptism and his entire physique wriggled. The sound of his bones dislocating and reforming once more echoed throughout the Crystal Palace. His dragon pressure filled the entire Crystal Palace like a solid substance. A powerful force flowed through every corner of his body, so strong that it almost felt as though this force could break the world. By the time everything calmed down again, more than half a month had passed. Yang Kai activated his divine sense and examined his body once more. It had to be said that the changes he experienced after he became a grand dragon were extremely drastic. Whenever he used his dragon transformation secret technique in the past, although he had a dragon form, he still retained some human characteristics. It could be said that he was half dragon and half human, however, he no longer had the slightest trace of human characteristics at this moment. He was now a genuine grand dragon with a 10,000 meters long smooth body that was covered in golden dragon scales. His dragon claws were so sharp that they left a scar in the void with a light swipe, and a swing of his dragon tail could conjure a violent force. These changes were unexpected. Qing Luan had mentioned that it didn't matter what his background was since he obtained the golden divine dragon source, he could be said to be part of the pureblood dragon clan. Looking at himself now, Yang Kai didn't know whether he was human or dragon anymore. With a shift of his thoughts, his enormous body rapidly shrank and returned to his human form. It was just that his current appearance was slightly different from the usual. At this moment, he was wearing a dazzling golden artifact armor. This artifact armor was formed from his dragon scales, so it had an incredibly strong defensive ability. He did not have such an ability before. Be that as it may, after learning various secrets from the Dragon Clan inheritance, the ability to transform his dragon scales into dragon armor was nothing more than a petty trick. But this golden artifact armor is a little too flamboyant and conspicuous. I practically resemble the sun radiating such a dazzling brilliance wherever I go. Yang Kai focused his thoughts and the brilliance of the artifact armor subsided considerably. Although the appearance was still incredibly luxurious, at the very least, it was not embarrassingly radiant anymore. After examining himself again, Yang Kai finally nodded in satisfaction. He was in no hurry to refine the Crystal Palace. Opening his mouth, he spat out a bead that emitted a faint golden light. The bead floated down to land on his palm. It was a dragon bead. The most important step for a juvenile dragon to become a grand dragon was to condense a dragon bead in their body. Juvenile dragons had no dragon beads. Only mature grand dragons had them. A dragon bead was similar to a monster beast's monster core. It was the crystallization of a grand dragon's power and the manifestation of their source. Looking at the golden bead in his hand, Yang Kai could clearly sense the horrifying strength contained within. Even though that power belonged to him, he couldn't help feeling a little frightened. His current strength was a little strange. In his human form, he was no more than a 6th-order open heaven realm master. However, if he transformed into a grand dragon, he was equivalent to a 7th-order open heaven realm master in strength. Moreover, both powers did not clash or interfere with each other. It was most likely that he was the only person in the world in this situation. A similar situation would not occur in the other dragon clan members. Absorbing the dragon bead back into his body, Yang Kai exhaled a long breath. His trip to the ancestral land could be said to be an unexpected surprise. While fleeing for his life previously, Yang Kai never imagined that a place like the ancestral land existed in the depths of the shattered ruins. Furthermore, he only spent several short years to advance from a juvenile dragon to a grand dragon. It could be said to be a huge harvest. Nevertheless, he had consumed many ancestral spirit fruits and ancestral spirit crystals in the process. He used up all the ancestral spirit fruits and 80% of all the ancestral spirit crystals he found inside the Crystal Palace. There was no other divine spirit who could achieve such a feat. After all, both the ancestral spirit fruit and the ancestral spirit crystal were extremely rare. If not because the demon sealing land was unsealed for the first time in countless eons, where would he find so many ancestral spirit fruits and ancestral spirit crystals? Yang Kai raised his eyes and looked outside. Everything was peaceful as the various divine spirit clans were guarding their sacred treasures and waiting for him to come out of retreat. A few trivial years was not enough to exhaust their patience. Now that he had become a grand dragon, it was time for Yang Kai to refine the Crystal Palace. The Dragon Clan's sacred treasure was of great help in terms of both cultivation and awakening the inheritance within one's source. If the Dragon Clan members in Voidland were sent here to cultivate in the future, the Crystal Palace would become their greatest support. Yang Kai sat down cross-legged and activated the power of his dragon vein to connect with the Crystal Palace. He had attempted this feat in the past, but unfortunately, his bloodline had been too weak at the time. His refinement speed was far too slow, so he gave up on the attempt. Now that he was a grand dragon, his speed was much greater. Half a year later, Kuan-Ao, who was cultivating in the demon sealing land, suddenly felt an abnormality. He opened his eyes only to see light flashing constantly from within the Dragon Clan's Crystal Palace. The flashing lights were accompanied by cracking sounds. The anomaly alarmed all the divine spirits nearby. Likewise, Qing Luan immediately looked in the direction of the Crystal Palace with a strange light in her eyes. That brat's speed is quite something. Is he about to finish refining it so soon? One of the divine spirits smiled. He initially thought that he would need to wait for a few more years. However, the sight before him clearly indicated that Yang Kai was about to finish refining the Crystal Palace. With so many ancestral spirit fruits, even a waste can become a grand dragon. Another divine spirit scathingly spat out with a twitch of his brow. The ancestral spirit fruits were such precious treasures that he was still heartbroken over being forced to offer up half of his supply. Martial Peak, Chapter 47:16, Speculation about the Divine Ability C. It took half a day for the anomalies of the Crystal Palace to settle down. After that, a figure flashed out from within. It was none other than Yang Kai. Feeling many pairs of eyes staring at him expectantly, he nodded at the crowd of divine spirits. Fortunately, I have not failed your expectation. Kuan-Ao burst into laughter. That's good. Let us retrieve our sacred treasures now that the Dragon Clan's Crystal Palace has also been refined. Then, he worriedly reminded Yang Kai, Brat, don't forget to cooperate with us later. Yang Kai responded. The divine spirits had been waiting for this day for a long time now. At this moment, they eagerly hurried over to their respective sacred treasures and activated their power. When the powers of these divine spirits fluctuated, The 16 sacred treasures that had long since been integrated into one were stimulated by the various divine spirits. There was a rumble that shook the entire world, and a series of cracking sounds rang out repeatedly. A short while later, the 16 sacred treasures turned into 16 rays of light that were recovered by the various divine spirit clans. Yang Kai toyed with a miniature palace in his hand that was countless times smaller than the crystal palace. The entire body of the palace seemed to be carved from a single exquisite piece of crystal. It was none other than the Dragon Clan's crystal palace itself. His expression revealed his slight astonishment. He had not expected the crystal palace to be able to change its size freely. After the sacred treasures were retrieved, the ancestral strength in the world lost its source of attraction. The huge chains penetrating the giant spirit god slowly disintegrated and changed back into the rich ancestral strength that permeated the world. The sight of the chains disintegrating was extremely overwhelming. During this period, all the divine spirits watched the giant spirit god warily. Qingluan, Kuan-Ao, and the others had previously investigated the situation inside the giant spirit god's body and determined that he was as dead as could be, but even so, it was a matter related to a giant spirit god after all. Who knew whether he had some sort of mysterious ability that would allow him to be brought back to life? Fortunately, the giant spirit god showed no movement even after the chains fell apart and the sacred treasures were retrieved. It looked like even the giant spirit god could not withstand the erosion of the ancestral strength over the countless years of suppression. There seemed to be an unusual change taking place in the world. Nobody could put a finger to the strange feeling, but all the divine spirits living in the ancestral land could clearly feel one thing: the ancestral land that was split into two in ancient times was slowly merging back into one entity at this moment. Kuan-Ao, I believe that it would be better for this place to be listed as a restricted area. What do you think? Qingluan stared at the giant spirit god for a moment before she turned to look at Kuan-Ao. Kuan-Ao pondered in silence for a moment and nodded in agreement. Good. Naturally, the other divine spirits would not object to what the Phoenix clan and the Kuan clan had agreed on. Under Qingluan's leadership, many divine spirits joined forces and worked together to set up a powerful barrier around the giant spirit god with their blood essence. The first reason was to turn this place into a restricted area to prevent any divine spirit from approaching carelessly. The other reason was to guard against any unexpected changes that might occur to the giant spirit god. By the time they finished working, 10 days had passed. The various divine spirit clans had benefited greatly from this trip to the demon sealing land. There was no need to mention the benefits gained by those who retrieved their sacred treasures. Even those without sacred treasures could enjoy the abundant ancestral strength brought about by merging the two halves of the ancestral land. They would no longer need to worry about the continuation of their respective clans or the impurity of their descendants' bloodlines. Yang Kai followed Qingluan and the others back to Four Phoenix Pavilion, and after consulting Qingluan, he decided to place the Dragon Clan's Crystal Palace in one of the mountain valleys with beautiful scenery. The Crystal Palace might be an extraordinary palace artifact, but it played a more important role as the Dragon Clan's sacred treasure. The Dragon Clan members from the Star Boundary would be coming to the ancestral land to cultivate, and leaving the Crystal Palace here would significantly help their growth. If not for these considerations, he would have taken the Crystal Palace away with him. Yang Kai sat opposite Qingluan and the others inside the main hall, telling them about the dream that he saw while cultivating in the Crystal Palace back then. After much deliberation, he decided that he should inform the Phoenix clan about this matter. Who could say? The Phoenix clan might know something about the secrets from the ancient times. Unfortunately, Qingluan and the others could not think of any useful information even after listening to his story. On the contrary, they were quite shocked by certain events that he revealed to them. From what you've said, the giant spirit god did indeed fight a ferocious battle with the divine spirits in ancestral land back then. In the end, it was the Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Empress of that generation who sacrificed themselves by burning their blood essence to mobilize the ancestral strength through the various sacred treasures to suppress and seal the giant spirit god. That's what I saw, Yang Kai nodded. The ancestral land was torn apart and divided in two. At the same time, the sources of the Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Empress were caught up in a void turbulence and vanished out of sight. That was until many years ago when this junior had the opportunity to obtain the Dragon Emperor's source in a small and weak world. Qingluan sighed in amazement. The Dragon Emperors are the strongest masters of the Dragon Clan, and there are often generations where no Dragon Emperor rises to power. No wonder your source is a divine dragon source. Only a divine dragon is qualified to be a Dragon Emperor. Yuan Chu asked, if the Dragon Emperor's source of that generation is with you, then what about the Phoenix Empress source? Have you seen it? If the two of them were caught up in a void turbulence, they might have appeared in the same place. Yang Kai replied, if I'm not mistaken, the Phoenix Empress source is with my senior sister, Su Yang. They were really together. Qingluan and the others became excited. Yuzhua asked, where is that senior sister of yours right now? She lives in Voidland located in the Void Territory. Yang Kai answered, following my return this time, I plan to send her and some of my divine spirit friends to the ancestral land. I hope you can help to take care of them when they arrive, seniors. Qingluan smiled, you've already mentioned this matter before, so of course it won't be a problem at all. Feel free to send them here. While speaking, she turned to look at Hong Hu, please go with Yang Kai, fourth sister. En. Hong Hu nodded. Yang Kai quickly said, there's no need to trouble you, senior. I know the position of the ancestral land now, so I only need you to tell me how to safely pass through the Divine Ability Sea. Qingluan said, the return of the Phoenix Empress is an important event for the Phoenix clan. We cannot be sloppy. Please let Hong Hu go with you. Seeing as she had already said so much, Yang Kai did not refuse her again. Besides, he would like nothing more than having a master like Hong Hu accompanying him on his travels. The information about how he had obtained the world spring would probably have spread across the shattered heaven by now, so there was no saying what kinds of troubles he might face when he returned to the shattered heaven again. When do you plan to leave? She asked. I wish to say goodbye to Senior Miemeng first. As you should. Qingluan nodded. The next day, Yang Kai strolled over to the place where Miemeng lived. It was obvious that Miemeng had detected his presence because the doors were wide open. He did not see the great general anywhere, and Miemeng claimed that it was because the boy was working hard to cultivate. However, according to Yang Kai's understanding of great general's character, he had the feeling that the little chicken had been forced into seclusion by his mother. In any case, he did not say anything regarding the matter. Before he departed, Yang Kai left behind several ancestral spirit crystals so that Miemeng could pass them on to Great General. Great General was still very young, so these ancestral spirit crystal would help him to reduce many years of intense cultivation and allow his bloodline to develop rapidly. Yang Kai no longer had many ancestral spirit crystals left on hand, as during his advancement to become a Grand Dragon, he had used up 80% of them in one go. Therefore, he only had slightly more than 200 of them left. He gave half of them to the Phoenix clan. After all, he would need the Phoenix clan's help to take care of the divine spirits who came from Voidland later. Then, he left the remaining half in the Crystal Palace. If Su Yang and the others needed the ancestral spirit crystals, they could help themselves to them. When all the preparations were done, Yang Kai prepared to leave the ancestral land with Hong Hu. A figure flew over from a distance and landed in front of Hong Hu. It was the white-robed youth from the Kuan clan who bowed and cupped his fist. Kuan Yu greets Senior Hong Hu. Hong Hu nodded, I will have to trouble you. Kuan Yu nodded faintly. Without even glancing at Yang Kai, he soared straight into the sky. Hong Hu shot a glance at Yang Kai, and the two of them quickly followed. Having lived in the ancestral land ever since she had been born, Hong Hu had never left the ancestral land before. She only knew that the ancestral land was surrounded by the Divine Ability Sea. Unfortunately, the Divine Ability Sea was so dangerous that even a mature divine spirit might succumb to its dangers and fail to pass through safely. Out of all the divine spirits in the ancestral land, only the Kuan clan knew of a safe passage through the Divine Ability Sea. That was something the Kuan clan discovered after relying on many masters to explore the Divine Ability Sea. It was by relying on this knowledge that Kuan Yu managed to travel through the Divine Ability Sea safely, even though he only had the strength of a 6th-order Open Heaven Realm master. When the Phoenix clan came forward to make a request, the Kuan clan naturally had nothing more to say about this matter. In the end, They assigned Kuan Yu to escort Hong Hu and Yang Kai through the Divine Ability Sea. Even if the Kuan clan had decided to ignore the matter, with Hong Hu's strength, there was a great chance that she would simply force her way through the Divine Ability Sea. That was how Cheng Yang entered the ancestral land. Although he encountered all sorts of dangers and wound up quite battered, he was still able to pass through the Divine Ability Sea. Following behind Kuan Yu, Hong Hu and Yang Kai quickly left the ancestral land and plunged into the Divine Ability Sea. The various divine abilities and secret techniques were unleashed one after another, but their power was not too strong. Whether it was Kuan Yu leading the way or Hong Hu and Yang Kai following behind, none of them had any trouble dealing with the divine abilities and secret techniques. It must have been difficult for the Kuan clan to discover this route. Hong Hu sighed in amazement. Kuan Yu's personality was generally on the colder side, so he had remained taciturn for the most part of the journey. Nevertheless, Hong Hu was his senior, so seeing as she had started the conversation, he could not ignore her and responded, "In order to find this passage, the Kuan clan paid a heavy price several thousands of years ago. 2 seniors lost their lives in the Divine Ability Sea. In terms of strength, they were comparable to the humans' 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters." She nodded. "I've heard of that." Yang Kai suddenly spoke up, "Senior, don't you think that the Divine Ability Sea is acting as a gigantic cage?" Hong Hu was stunned for a moment. If he had not mentioned this matter, she would never have thought about it. Now that she heard those words though, she couldn't help thinking that the possibility was rather high. Yang Kai had this feeling the last time he saw the Divine Ability Sea, and after seeing the giant spirit god being suppressed and sealed in the demon sealing land, his conjecture only became more certain. These divine abilities and secret techniques were left behind countless years ago, and despite going through the erosion and baptism of time, they still contain such fearsome power. It's difficult to imagine just how strong they were at their peak. It might be that even 9th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters would not come out unscathed if they ventured deep into this place. Hong Hu pondered in silence for a moment before she asked, "Are you saying that the Divine Ability Sea was created as a protective barrier to prevent the giant spirit god from escaping?" Yang Kai nodded. "That's the only possibility." Her eyes flashed at those words. "If it's as you said, then the battle in ancient times should have shown traces of human participation. After all, many of the divine abilities in the Divine Ability Sea do not come from divine spirits." "Did you see any humans in the memories?" Yang Kai shook his head. "I did not see any. But that is not strange either. The ancestral strength is extremely dangerous to non-divine spirits. If the giant spirit god was causing havoc in the ancestral land, only the divine spirits could fight back against him. Fortunately, the divine spirits won that battle even though they paid a heavy price for their victory. Regardless, the great experts of the human race must have set up the Divine Ability Sea outside the ancestral land just to be on the safe side. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4717, A Scourge Never Dies. Too much time had passed. It was so long ago that even a long-lived race like the divine spirits did not know what had happened back then. Nevertheless, Yang Kai's conjecture was reasonable. It might be the truth of what had happened back in ancient times. The only thing that confused Yang Kai right now was why a giant spirit god, being from a race which was generally innocent, mild-tempered, and would never take the initiative to provoke others, had started such a ferocious battle in the ancestral land. Yang Kai had personally witnessed countless divine spirits dying at the hands of that giant spirit god during that battle. Even the dragon and the phoenix clans had suffered heavy casualties. The Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Empress of that generation even went so far as to burn all their blood essence to activate a massive grand array using the sacred treasures of 16 clans to condense the ancestral strength in the ancestral land to suppress and seal the black giant spirit god. It had been a mighty battle indeed. Following behind Kuan Yu, they navigated through the Divine Ability Sea and made steady progress. All the divine abilities and secret techniques unleashed along the way were easily resolved by the 3 of them. A few days later, the view in front of them abruptly widened. The 3 of them had made their way out of the Divine Ability Sea. Kuan Yu halted in his tracks, turned to Hong Hu, and cupped his fist. "Senior, we're out of the Divine Ability Sea now. This junior will only escort you up to this point. Simply follow the way we came earlier when you return." Go back and thank your clan head on my behalf. Tell him the Phoenix clan owes him a favor. Hong Hu nodded. She had memorized the route along the way here and even used her power as a divine spirit to leave a mark along the trail, so there was no need to worry about how she was going to return. Kuan Yu lowered his head and said, "This junior will definitely relay the message. I shall take my leave now." While speaking, his figure shifted and he rushed back into the divine ability sea. After Kuan Yu departed, Yang Kai and Hong Hu continued their journey. It was Hong Hu's first time leaving the ancestral land, so although her cultivation was impressive, she couldn't help being curious about the outside world. Looking around though, she saw nothing but the vast and desolate void. Hence, it was inevitable for her to feel disappointed as she asked, "Is everything in the outside world like this?" Yang Kai laughed. "The situation at the Shattered Heaven is special. You will see a different scenery once we arrive back at a prosperous great territory, senior." She nodded. "In that case, I look forward to it. Let's go." He took the lead while speaking. He and Xia Lin Lang had fled deep into the Shattered Heaven back then, so it would take quite some time for him to leave. Traveling through the void was extremely boring. Fortunately, they could chat with each other along the way. Yang Kai told her about various things in the outside world. Regardless of the importance of the matter, Hong Hu listened with great relish. Ever since leaving the Divine Ability Sea, Yang Kai vaguely noticed that he had developed a peculiar feeling. This feeling came from the depths of his bloodline. It felt as though there was something located somewhere far away that was closely connected to him. At the beginning, he did not understand what this feeling was. Nevertheless, it didn't take long before he abruptly realized that this feeling was the connection he felt with the Dragon Clan's Dragon Altar. It was once said that he would be able to sense the location of the Dragon Altar when his bloodline reached a certain level. That was the inheritance found deep within every Dragon Clan member's bloodline. In the past, his dragon form had only been 3,000 meters long. Moreover, he had been half human, half dragon. It made sense that he could not sense the Dragon Altar in such a state. However, this perception came into being now that he had advanced from a juvenile dragon to a grand dragon and his dragon form was 10,000 meters long. Even if he was separated by a great distance, that feeling would never be severed. Yang Kai was certain that he would eventually find the Dragon Clan's Dragon Altar one day if he followed in the direction of this feeling. Thus, he suddenly felt a little excited. Ever since coming to the 3,000 worlds, he had been trying to locate the Dragon Altar. Unfortunately, the Dragon Altar was very hidden. Despite being one of the 36 cave heavens, nobody knew the location of the Dragon Altar. At this moment, the connection coming from the depths of his bloodline was undoubtedly pointing the way for him. It was a pity that he had urgent matters to take care of right now. Seeing as it was inconvenient for him to search for the Dragon Altar immediately, Yang Kai could only delay this matter for the time being. The Shattered Heaven was vast. Furthermore, there were no universe temples that they could use to transfer from place to place. Despite flying for a whole month, the two of them remained inside the Shattered Heaven. One day, Hong Hu suddenly noticed something. She turned to look in a certain direction and frowned after a moment. "There are people fighting over there." Yang Kai followed her gaze and sure enough, he saw several streams of light darting around in a relentless pursuit. Hong Hu's cultivation was higher than his, so it was only natural for her to detect the anomaly before him. The Shattered Heaven is unlike the other great territories in the 3,000 worlds. It is very chaotic and fights are very common here. Yang Kai explained, but showed no intention to intervene. Although Yang Kai had no intention to intervene in the fight, one of the parties in the fight seemed to have taken notice of their presence and was rushing directly in their direction. Yang Kai furrowed his brow slightly as this was also a common occurrence. When one party was losing a battle, they often liked to divert their opponent's attention to another person. Or, they could be trying to ask for help. Regardless of the situation, the person who was unwittingly dragged into the mess would be the one troubled. It was not his first time encountering an incident like this, so it was only natural that Yang Kai understood the other party's intentions. Nevertheless, he had no intention to flee. Hong Hu was right next to him, so who in the Shattered Heaven would dare to act presumptuous in front of her? All of a sudden, Yang Kai exclaimed in surprise. When the leading figure approached, he detected a familiar aura. A short while later, he finally confirmed his suspicions when he had a good look at that person's appearance. It truly was a person that he was acquainted with. It was Qin Fen. He was one of the few open heaven realm masters among Xia Linlang's subordinates. Why is he here? Where is Xia Linlang? Seeing as it was an acquaintance, Yang Kai could not ignore the situation anymore. He raised his hand and summoned the Azure Dragon Spear. After that, he charged towards Qin Fen. Hong Hu quickly followed closely behind. On the other hand, there was no doubt that Qin Fen had also recognized Yang Kai. A complicated gaze immediately entered his eyes as he gritted his teeth and rushed over. A short while later, they brushed past each other. Yang Kai raised his spear and stabbed forward. With the power of a spear, the world collapsed and the expressions of the two figures chasing from behind changed greatly as they quickly defended themselves. The collision of the world force swept across the void and Yang Kai's figure stumbled slightly before he steadied himself once more. On the other hand, the two chasing figures were involuntarily sent flying backward at the same time. Even though they were also in the sixth order open heaven realm, they failed to defend against the attack of somebody in the same order as them despite combining both their strengths. If they had not personally experienced something like this, they would not have dared to believe that such a thing was possible. They stabilized their figures with great difficulty, but before they could declare their names, a horrifying pressure descended upon them. The pressure was so strong that their figures slumped slightly and their expressions changed drastically. A divine spirit. One of the middle-aged men stared at Hong Hu, who was standing quietly in the void, with an expression of fear and horror. The power of this divine spirit was too immense. As sixth order open heaven realm masters, how could they fail to sense such a thing? This pressure was so strong that it was comparable to an eighth order open heaven realm master. Why did we run into a divine spirit here? The two of them looked at each other with a bitter taste in their mouths. Meanwhile, Qin Fen returned. His complexion was pale and there were traces of blood on his clothes. His aura was weak, so it was obvious that he was injured. Why are you here? Yang Kai turned around and asked, where is Xia Linlang? Qin Fen clenched his fists tightly and responded with his head lowered, Madam was captured. Yang Kai scowled. By who? Xia Linlang was a seventh order open heaven realm master. As long as an eighth order open heaven realm master did not make a move, who in the shattered heaven could capture her? Bright sun divine monarch. Qin Fen gritted his teeth. When we were sent out of that place, Cheng Yang appeared out of nowhere before we could go very far. He was probably lying in ambush all this while. Madam was no match for him, so she could only escape. She lured Cheng Yang away so that we could have a chance to flee. Unfortunately, we've gotten separated after several years of running around. That old thing. Scourges never die. Yang Kai scowled deeply. Qin Fen looked at Yang Kai. Cheng Yang said that you should go and meet him if you want the madam to be returned safely. Yang Kai sneered, is he so certain that I will go looking for him? Qin Fen became furious, are you going to ignore madam's life or death situation? If not for you, Linlang Cave Heaven would never have been destroyed. With the protection of Linlang Cave Heaven, even Cheng Yang would not have been able to harm the madam. Yang Kai glanced at Qin Fen. Xia Linlang brought me back because she wanted the world spring. Everything that happened afterwards was simply a means to protect myself. To be honest, the destruction of Linlang Cave Heaven was the result of Xia Linlang's actions. Qin Fen clenched his teeth and glared furiously when he heard those words. His expression looked like he wanted to bite Yang Kai to death. Yang Kai rubbed his chin and snorted, but there is no denying that we have gone through difficult times together. Cheng Yang only captured her because of the world spring. Ha! How troublesome. Turning to look at the two sixth order open heaven realm masters who didn't even dare to move a muscle, he asked, are they Cheng Yang's men? Qin Fen replied, that's right. The middle-aged man quickly explained, we have no malicious intentions. It's just that Xia Linlang is worried about their safety, so the divine monarch asked us to invite him back as a guest. The others are already with the divine monarch. Qin Fen coldly snorted, no malicious intentions. My foot. If not because this Qin has some ability, I would have died at your hands a long time ago. The middle-aged man said, When have we ever directed our murderous intent at you throughout our pursuit? I'm afraid you don't know your own situation right now. All the masters in the shattered heaven have set out, but the world's spring remains nowhere to be seen. The rumors claim that Xia Linlang has gotten the world's spring, so if you had encountered anybody else, you would have died a miserable death a long time ago. Yang Kai raised a hand to interrupt their argument. He then looked at the middle-aged man and said, "The world's spring is with me. It's useless even if Bright Sun Divine Monarch captures Xia Linlang. But, since he is so desperate to meet me, I'll go and pay him a visit." The middle-aged man exchanged a glance with his comrade. They did not dare to believe that things would be so simple, so he asked incredulously, "Really?" Yang Kai gestured, "Lead the way." The middle-aged man responded as though his dreams had come true, "This way." After saying that, he and his companion turned around to lead the way. Yang Kai glanced at Qin Fen. "What are you going to do?" Qin Fen quickly said, "I'm coming with you." Yang Kai nodded and quickly chased after those two. Hong Hu came over in a flash, her eyebrows furrowed slightly. "Cheng Yang knows that you are a Dragon Clan member. Why is he trying to target you? What reckless bravery." Yang Kai smiled and said, "The divine spirits have not left the ancestral land in a long time. It is only natural that my identity as a Dragon Clan member does not frighten him. He is an 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Master after all, so he can be considered quite capable." Hong Hu sneered at those words. It is not that the divine spirits are unable to leave the ancestral land, but that they don't want to. I'm curious to see what gives him the confidence to act so brazenly in front of a divine spirit. Looks like he is going to suffer greatly. Yang Kai took intense pleasure in the other party's approaching misfortune. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4718, Guests from Afar. Several figures stopped in the void. Yang Kai looked left and right for a bit before he asked, "Is this the place?" The middle-aged man in the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm nodded, "Yes. Announce our arrival." Yang Kai gestured. A trace of struggle crossed the middle-aged man's face, but he called out loudly nonetheless, "Divine Monarch, Yang Kai is here. Please open the portal, Divine Monarch." The void remained silent, and there was no reaction. He shouted once more, but there was no movement. Yang Kai turned to look at the middle-aged man and narrowed his eyes slightly, turning the middle-aged man as pale as a death sentence prisoner. His voice trembled as he shouted again, "Please open the portal, Divine Monarch." "Are you sure this is the place?" Yang Kai asked impatiently. The middle-aged man nodded nervously, "It's right here." Yang Kai frowned slightly. He did not understand the reason for the middle-aged man's reaction. In any case, if Bright Sun Divine Monarch was really hiding here but refused to reveal himself, then it could only mean that he was afraid of Hong Hu. He probably never imagined that the Phoenix clan would show up. Even if he was in the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm, he was bound to suffer a loss against a master like Hong Hu. Space principles began fluctuating with a single thought from Yang Kai. Like a pebble thrown into a calm lake, a circle of ripples spread out into the surroundings with him as the center. Consequently, the void became distorted everywhere the ripples passed. Beside him, Hong Hu watched with bright eyes. She raised her hand slightly to feel the mysteries of space principles. It was her first time seeing such a strange power, so she couldn't help being curious. At the beginning, nothing much changed, but as time passed, the space principles that spread out like ripples on the surface of the water began to show a weak fluctuation. It was as though the swift river current had encountered a large boulder. Yang Kai's gaze shifted in a certain direction. At the same time, he urged the space principles more and more fiercely. The weak fluctuations gradually became more and more obvious as a result. About an incense stick later, even Hong Hu and the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters who did not understand anything about the Tao of space could detect the anomaly. Under the agitation of space principles, it soon became clear that there was a large space at that spot in the void which was different from its surroundings. That location was none other than the entrance connecting the universe cave heaven where Bright Sun Divine Monarch lived to the outside world. Yang Kai was just about to increase his efforts to forcibly break open the entrance when space distorted and opened to reveal a portal. Immediately after that, Cheng Yang's figure stepped out from within and he loudly said, I was not aware of your arrival, Lady Hong Hu. Please forgive this Cheng for my lack of hospitality. After saying that, he turned to look at his two subordinates. His voice became cold and ruthless, incompetent good-for-nothings. What's the use of having you? The expressions of those two changed greatly when they heard those words, and they immediately begged for mercy. Nonetheless, Cheng Yang ignored their pleading and raised his hand. When he slammed his palm down, the power of an eighth-order open heaven realm master flooded out and a mighty world force filled the void. With the power of a single palm strike, the heads of the two sixth-order open heaven realm masters were crushed on the spot. Their headless corpses swayed slightly, then their small universes collapsed and their world force dissipated. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes slightly. Hong Hu coldly snorted, "How impressive, divine monarch." Cheng Yang had decisively killed two of his subordinates in front of her without any hesitation. It was clearly a demonstration of his strength. Although she lived in the ancestral land for a long time and this was her first trip to the outside world, even she knew that a sixth-order open heaven realm master was not just some useless cabbage to discard at will. A sixth-order open heaven realm master had more than enough strength to stand on their own in the 3,000 worlds. As long as the high-rank open heaven realm masters of the various cave heavens and paradises did not step forward, sixth-order masters could be said to be the strongest. Lady Hong Hu, please calm your anger. Cheng Yang's actions are not what you think. You've lived in the divine spirit's ancestral land for a long time, so you're not familiar with the situation in the shattered heaven. Yang Kai's eyes flashed slightly as he vaguely realized something and came over to Hong Hu's side to explain in a low voice, to the masters hiding in the shattered heaven, their hideouts are their strongest and final layer of defense. Therefore, the location of their hideouts must never be exposed to outsiders, as it will only bring endless troubles to them otherwise. It would have been bad enough if those two sixth-order open heaven realm masters had brought Yang Kai to this place. However, they even brought Hong Hu along with them. Unable to silence the witnesses, Cheng Yang could only vent his anger on his subordinates in a fit of rage. If they could bring Yang Kai and Hong Hu here, then wouldn't they bring his enemies home if they were captured by them in the shattered heaven, or worse, the masters of the cave heavens and paradises in the future? Where would bright sun divine monarch hide then? Having said that, Yang Kai was the only person in the world who could easily force open the portal of a universe cave heaven thanks to his proficiency in the Tao of space. Even if an eighth-order open heaven realm master from the cave heavens or paradises were to show up here, they would not have such an easy time despite knowing the location. Cheng Yang had remained hidden and refused to come out earlier due to his fear of Hong Hu. It was not until he saw that his hideout was about to be forcibly opened that he had no choice but to reveal himself. Those who come from afar are guest. Lady Hong Hu, this way please. Cheng Yang gestured forward. Hong Hu nodded faintly and stepped inside. Yang Kai shot a look at Qin Fen and quickly followed after Hong Hu. Upon entering the portal, Cheng Yang immediately took the lead while Yang Kai looked around and raised his brow at the sight. Divine monarch, is this place a universe cave heaven? Indeed. Cheng Yang nodded. This universe cave heaven was left behind by an unknown senior. When this monarch first arrived at the shattered heaven, I once fought a battle here and accidentally discovered traces of this universe cave heaven during that fight. However, it took me 300 years just to find the portal and another 100 to get inside. After saying that, he gave Yang Kai a meaningful look. I've long heard about the extraordinariness of the Tao of space, but I've never had the honor to witness its greatness before. Having seen it today, this monarch is truly amazed. He had spent hundreds of years just to open the universe cave heaven's portal and occupy this place. Meanwhile, Yang Kai had only spent an incense to nearly forcibly open the portal. The contrast nearly made Cheng Yang spit blood in distress. Nevertheless, he knew that there was nothing to envy. The Tao of space was not something just anybody could cultivate. Yang Kai smiled. Many thanks for your high praise, divine monarch. I simply specialize in my own field. Cheng Yang raised his brow and commented, you are too humble, little brother. Perhaps we can work together on a certain project. Yang Kai was astonished. Cooperate on what? Cheng Yang continued, the shattered heaven is vast and boundless, and there are many opportunities coexisting with various risks. Universe cave heavens and universe paradises are abundant here. Unfortunately, not many of them have been discovered and explored because we do not have the knowledge or ability to do so. Most of them remain hidden in the void. However, this monarch knows of no less than 5 locations where there's a high possibility that universe cave heavens or universe paradises exists. It's a pity, but I am unable to confirm my suspicions. If you cooperate with this monarch and join forces to explore these 5 areas, then there is no need to worry about not finding anything good. As far as I know, the world spring in your possession was found in one of these universe cave heavens, right? Yang Kai was indeed tempted by those words. If what Cheng Yang said was true, it might be a good idea to work together in this matter. Be that as it may, it was not good to reveal how keen he was about the idea lest he was bullied by Cheng Yang as a result. Even though he was tempted, Yang Kai responded calmly, "That may be so. Unfortunately, I don't have much time. I will be truthful with you, Divine Monarch. I've been away from home for quite a while, and my heart yearns to return. If I had not met your subordinates along the way and learned that Xia Linlang was staying at your place as a guest, I would have left the shattered heaven by now." Cheng Yang chuckled. "It turns out that you are quite a family man, little brother Yang." Their conversation afterward was not worth mentioning. While the two of them were talking, Hong Hu followed along silently. She showed no intention of expressing her opinion on anything. Not long afterward, the 4 of them arrived and landed on a certain spirit peak. Several figures immediately rushed out of the palace. It was Xia Linlang and her subordinates. They were startled and looked worried upon seeing Qin Fen and Yang Kai arriving together. However, Xia Linlang immediately felt relieved when she recognized Hong Hu. She had been a guest at 4 Phoenix Pavilion during her time in the ancestral land, so she knew Hong Hu's identity. Hurriedly stepping forward, she gave an elegant bow. "Greetings, Lady Hong Hu." Hong Hu nodded lightly. No need to be so polite. They did not know each other well, and could even be said that they were mere passing acquaintances, so there was nothing much to say between them. Xia Linlang seemed a little confused by the situation at hand, so she glanced at Yang Kai inquiringly. Yang Kai smiled and said, "I met Brother Qin by chance when I came out of the ancestral land. After hearing that you are staying with the Divine Monarch as a guest, I decided to come and pay you a visit." She immediately understood the situation and nodded. "Knowing that my residence has been destroyed, the Divine Monarch kindly invited me to stay for a while. The Divine Monarch is so hospitable that I couldn't refuse. I'm afraid I've caused trouble for the Divine Monarch." Cheng Yang smiled and waved his hand dismissively. "If you're willing, you can stay here as long as you want." He seemed extremely friendly and hospitable, and if someone who did not know the truth were to witness this scene, they would probably believe that Xia Linlang had really been invited to stay here as a guest. "It's inappropriate to bother you for too long, Divine Monarch." While speaking, she glanced at Yang Kai. Yang Kai nodded. "I also have important matters at hand, so I can't stay for long." Cheng Yang quickly said, "You've come from so far away, please allow this monarch to show you some hospitality. To be honest with you, this monarch rarely has people coming to visit as guests. I've already instructed my people to prepare a banquet. It won't be too late to leave after." Yang Kai turned his head to look at Hong Hu, who nodded lightly in response. Cheng Yang was an 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, and although he was forced to buckle to the pressure and could not do anything to them, it was still better to show him some respect. Only then did Yang Kai nod in agreement. "Since you've already said so much, Divine Monarch, it would be impolite for us to refuse." Cheng Yang laughed heartily, "As it should be. Please come this way." He led the crowd to a grand hall located on another spirit peak where, sure enough, a banquet had been prepared. When they all took their seats, an endless number of delicacies were served to the table. There were also beautiful young women singing and dancing below them to enhance the atmosphere. Yang Kai and Cheng Yang were like old friends who had not seen each other in a long time, drinking and toasting with each other frequently. Hong Hu was not interested in alcohol, singing, or dancing. On the contrary, she fell in love with the beautiful and delicious fruits placed in front of her, which she ate in small bites. Meanwhile, Xia Linlang and the others had complicated expressions on their faces. Just yesterday, they were prisoners. They never imagined that they would become guests of honor in the blink of an eye. Their statuses had changed so quickly that they felt extremely uncomfortable. It gave them the feeling of being in a dream. After several rounds of drinks, Cheng Yang was flushed red due to alcohol and raised his glass and said, "Little brother Yang, if I have to say it myself, we have a friendship born from fighting each other. This monarch rarely admires anybody, but I truly admire you. You are the first Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master to escape from this monarch." Martial Peak, Chapter 4719, Bargaining. Cheng Yang was absolutely ecstatic when he first heard the news that the world spring had fallen into the hands of a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master. With his strength, what was a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master in comparison? He initially assumed that it would be easy pickings if he took action himself. Who could have known that Yang Kai would give him such a huge and unpleasant surprise instead? The strength of a Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Master was certainly nothing in front of Cheng Yang, but the other party was not only proficient in the Tao of space, but also an expert at escaping. He failed to capture Yang Kai as a result. When Cheng Yang's chase brought him into the Divine Ability Sea, he became stuck in an impossible situation. It was a miserable experience. If not because Yang Kai wanted to borrow his strength to leave the Divine Ability Sea, Cheng Yang was certain he would have been abandoned in that shattered space. If that had happened, even an Eighth Order Open Heaven Realm Master like himself would have been trapped inside. It would have been impossible for him to turn his fate around again. After all, he had personally experienced the strangeness of the shattered space himself. That was why it was not a complete lie when Cheng Yang claimed that he admired Yang Kai. There was some truth and sincerity to his words. After staying in the ancestral land for some time, he learned that Yang Kai was not only closely related to the Dragon Clan but he was now being personally escorted by a master from the Phoenix Clan. At this point, there was no longer any need to yearn for the world spring again. Cheng Yang did not have the guts to make an enemy of the Phoenix Clan in the ancestral land, as they were in existence even stronger than the Kuan Clan. Having gone through so much, though, it might be possible to make up for some of his losses if he could work together with Yang Kai. It was for that reason that he opened the portal of his cave mansion so enthusiastically. After several rounds of drinks, Cheng Yang brought up the topic again. "Little brother, I have connections and resources while you have the ability. If you and I work together, I'm sure we will profit enormously. Won't you consider it?" Yang Kai raised his glass and looked at Cheng Yang with a smile. "Are you talking about the matter regarding the Universe Paradises and Universe Cave Heavens, Divine Monarch?" "Naturally." Cheng Yang nodded. In the Shattered Heaven, only such valuable prizes would interest an Eighth Order Open Heaven Realm Master like him. There was no saying what good things he might discover inside. Yang Kai was about to refuse when he suddenly recalled that Xia Lin Lang seemed to be homeless after the destruction of Pear Flower Cave Heaven. The destruction of Pear Flower Cave Heaven was more or less related to him. Not to mention, she was reluctant to leave the Shattered Heaven. What would happen to her once he left? Yang Kai pondered in silence for a moment before he said, "You mentioned that you know 5 or 6 locations suspected to have Universe Cave Heavens or Universe Paradises, right, Divine Monarch?" Seeing that Yang Kai was interested in this matter, Cheng Yang immediately raised his brow. "That's not all. The possibility of these 5 or 6 locations is just higher. If I include the areas with a lower probability, then there are more than 10 locations. This monarch might be in Eighth Order Open Heaven Realm, but my cultivation is useless in this regard. I have no access to them, much less the ability to determine whether a portal exists in these places. However, things would be different if you are involved, little brother." The portal of his cave mansion had been found easily by Yang Kai, and if Cheng Yang had not revealed himself in time, there were signs that the portal would have forcibly opened. The fact that the portal could even persist for that long was thanks to Cheng Yang's years of work to reinforce and conceal it. On the other hand, the Universe Cave Heavens and Universe Paradises scattered around the Shattered Heaven were completely unoccupied. These places would be even easier to open. Yang Kai took a small sip of his wine with an expression of indecision. Cheng Yang struck while the iron was hot. "Rest assured, little brother. I won't let your efforts be in vain. Lady Hong who is here too. We can ask her to be our witness." Yang Kai looked up at Cheng Yang. "Divine Monarch, do you mean?" Every undiscovered universe cave heaven or universe paradise contains the assets and property of its former owner. If you help me determine the location and open the portals, little brother, this monarch is willing to share all the proceeds with you in a 30/70 ratio. Yang Kai looked at Cheng Yang with a smile. 70 for me and 30 for you, divine monarch? Cheng Yang responded seriously, you must be joking, little brother. Exploring the universe cave heavens and universe paradises will require massive amounts of time and energy. They might even contain unpredictable risks. It is only natural that this monarch will take the largest slice of the pie. Your role is only to open the door after all. You don't need to worry about everything that comes afterward. You only need to sit back and wait for the rewards. Yang Kai shook his head, 30% is too little. If that's the case, I might as well go home, bring a group of people over, and search on my own. That way, no matter how many discoveries we unearth, they will all belong to me. Cheng Yang chuckled, I will not deny that you are capable, little brother. Otherwise, I would not have asked you to cooperate with me. But, even if you are proficient in the Tao of space, how many universe cave heavens and universe paradises can you find over the years without any clues? The shattered heaven is vast, so even if you spend hundreds or thousands of years searching, you might not find a single one. On the other hand, it will be different if you cooperate with this monarch. I can point you to several likely locations, which will save you precious time and effort. Yang Kai nodded, your words make sense, divine monarch. Be that as it may, you will need to show me some sincerity if you want to cooperate with me, divine monarch. 30/70 is unacceptable. Cheng Yang showed a pained expression. After hesitating for a long while, he gulped down a glass of wine and slammed his glass on the table forcefully. He quickly said, 40/60. This monarch will take 60 and you will take 40. Let's just say this monarch is your friend now, little brother. Yang Kai shook his head again and raised his palm, 50/50. We'll split the profits evenly. Cheng Yang bitterly said, little brother, you are trying to take the lion's share. Yang Kai rapped his knuckles against the table lightly, that's my bottom line. If it's not okay with you, divine monarch, we can remain friends, but don't bother speaking of this matter again. I will be honest with you, divine monarch, I do have something urgent to attend to, so I need to return home as soon as possible. Lady Hong Hu is here for that reason. Cheng Yang glanced at Hong Hu as though trying to determine whether Yang Kai was speaking the truth. It was just that Hong Hu was eating the spirit fruit in her hands with her head lowered, so there was no way to read her expression. After a brief struggle, he finally spoke again, 50/50 is not impossible, but this monarch has two conditions that both little brother and Lady Hong Hu will need to accept. Hong Hu raised her head to look at him and smiled, the affairs between the two of you have nothing to do with me. Why did I get pulled into this? Cheng Yang, however, replied seriously, this matter requires you to come forward yourself, Lady Hong Hu. Curious now, she asked, go on. Cheng Yang abruptly ripped open his shirt and exposed his chest. Everybody immediately looked in that direction and Xia Lin Lang gasped in shock while Yang Kai revealed a look of understanding. Cheng Yang's chest area was covered in what looked like fish scales. They grew densely on his skin, spreading from his chest all the way down to his waist. He quickly explained, after venturing deep into the divine spirit's ancestral land, this monarch's body began showing signs of monster transformation caused by the erosion of the ancestral strength. Although I managed to withdraw in time, I did not come out unscathed. Following years of recuperation, I managed to resolve most of the ancestral strength in my body, however, a small portion remains. Like maggots on rotting bones, I am unable to get rid of them. I would like to ask Lady Hong Hu to help me resolve this calamity for me. The ancestral land's ancestral strength was an extremely bizarre force. It was a force that could even suppress and seal a being as mighty as a giant spirit god. Cheng Yang might be in the 8th order open heaven realm, but he suffered greatly for the past few years after being contaminated by the ancestral strength. It would have been nothing if he was a divine spirit, as the ancestral strength would have been highly beneficial and contain no drawbacks for him. Unfortunately, he was pure human, so the ancestral strength was nothing more than poison to him. Cheng Yang was lucky that he had not been exposed to too much of the ancestral strength, Otherwise, he would have undergone complete monster transformation, losing his conscious mind as a result. Hong Hu examined him with a frown. A long while passed before she said, "I will need to check your condition thoroughly before I can be certain whether I can help you." To which Cheng Yang nodded, "No problem." After saying that, his figure flashed as he came to stand in front of her. She raised her hand and lightly touched the scales on his chest. Bits of fluorescent light flashed at the tips of her fingers and wandered across each of those scales. A short while later, she withdrew her hand. He looked at her nervously. Hong Hu lightly said, "Thanks to your powerful cultivation, you not only dispelled most of the ancestral strength, but also prevented the remaining ancestral strength from eroding too deeply into your body over the past few years. Otherwise, it would have been useless even if I tried to help you." Cheng Yang was elated to hear those words. "Do you mean that you can help me dispel the rest of the ancestral strength, Lady Hong Hu?" She nodded. "Give me 3 days. Many thanks." He breathed out deeply, feeling as though a large weight had lifted from his heart. Ever since leaving the ancestral land, the past few years had not been pleasant for him. The ancestral strength was extremely peculiar and difficult to dispel. It did not affect his daily life for the most part, but it caused great inconvenience when it came to his cultivation. Every time he tried to exert his power, the ancestral strength would show signs of movement. This phenomenon made him extremely nervous. Now that he received Hong Hu's guarantee, the depressed mood that shrouded over him for so many years lightened considerably. The way the Kuan clan handled this affair is wildly inappropriate. "I will reprimand them for you when I get back," she said. Cheng Yang jumped in fright at her words and hurriedly waved his hands. "No, no. It's simply caused by my lack of ability." Although he was exposed to so much ancestral strength because the Kuan clan had forced him to venture into the demon sealing land, he did not dare to voice his dissatisfaction despite the grievances in his heart. He would not have enough lives to survive the ordeal if the Kuan clan came out of the ancestral land to cause trouble for him. Yang Kai spoke up, "The first condition has been fulfilled. What is your second condition, Divine Monarch?" Cheng Yang chuckled. "The second condition is indefinite and may never be fulfilled. Please speak freely, Divine Monarch." Yang Kai gestured politely. "I became acquainted with you thanks to one of the 4 universe pillars, the world spring, so I will be truthful with you, little brother. I believe that there might be other 4 universe pillars contained within the universe cave heavens and universe paradises, hidden in the shattered heaven. After all, the profound fish appeared in the world 3,000 years ago, only for the world spring to appear now. These incidents indicate that the 4 universe pillars might be rare, but they were not extinct in ancient times. My second condition is that, if we find any of the 4 great universe pillars or 12 minor universe pillars during the period of our cooperation, this monarch will be the one to receive them. For me, most ordinary items are no longer useful. On the other hand, the 4 great universe pillars and the 12 minor universe pillars are extremely useful to me. Of course, if we come across such an opportunity, this monarch will not take these items for free. You can consider it as part of my share." This request was not excessive. Cheng Yang was probably still obsessed over the world spring, but Yang Kai was closely connected to the divine spirits in the ancestral land, so he could not make any moves on him. In that case, he could only settle for the second best option. Yang Kai nodded readily. "Good." After a pause, he added, "But, since you have 2 conditions, Divine Monarch, I also have a condition of my own. I wonder if you will be able to grant my request, Divine Monarch." Cheng Yang smiled and said, "Since you agreed so readily, little brother, this monarch will not take advantage of your good intentions. Please speak freely if you need something, little brother." Yang Kai said, "I need one of the universe cave heavens after we finish exploring them. Moreover, I want you to promise me that you will never expose the location of that universe cave heaven to anyone, Divine Monarch." Marshall Peak, Chapter 4720, Do Me a Favor. Cheng Yang was about to ask what Yang Kai wanted to do with a fully explored universe cave heaven. It was no secret that these places were valuable when they remained hidden in the void, but they quickly became of little value once somebody discovered them. However, he suddenly noticed Xia Lin Lang sitting by the side and immediately understood the situation. He smiled and nodded, "Of course, That's not a problem. Even if you want 2 or 3 of them, you can go ahead and take as many of them as you want, little brother. This monarch will never give this information to anybody else. Likewise, Xia Lin Lang caught on to the situation and nodded at Yang Kai gratefully. Yang Kai was obviously asking for the universe cave heaven for her sake. At the same time, she couldn't help feeling a little complicated. She was the one who kidnapped and brought him to Pear Flower Cave Heaven back then. It had not been many years since that incident, but now he was talking and laughing on friendly terms with masters like Cheng Yang. Not to mention, he also had a close relationship with the Phoenix clan of the ancestral land. The negotiations were settled, and everybody was satisfied. When the banquet ended, Cheng Yang arranged accommodation for everybody and agreed to depart with Yang Kai after 3 days. The reason for the delay was that Hong Hu needed 3 days to help him dispel the ancestral strength in his body. Moreover, Yang Kai had repeatedly stated that he had urgent matters to deal with and could not be delayed for too long. That was why they decided to proceed as soon as possible. It was late at night when a knock on the door sounded. Yang Kai got up and opened the door. Xia Lin Lang was standing outside the door, so he smiled lightly when he saw her and said, "I was just about to look for you myself." While speaking, he stepped sideways and let her into the room. Xia Lin Lang asked curiously, "Did you need me for something? Take a seat." Yang Kai gestured before he poured a cup of tea for her. Sitting down opposite her, he said, "Why don't you speak first? Did you need me for something?" "I came to thank you." She gave a soft laugh. "I wanted to thank you for worrying about my living situation and even asking Bright Sun Divine Monarch for a universe cave heaven. It's only proper. After all, I am partly responsible for the destruction of Pear Flower Cave Heaven. But the root cause lies with me. If I had not captured you back then, what happened afterward would not have taken place at all. It's my own fault for falling into this situation. It would have been perfectly reasonable for you to ignore my circumstances. Therefore, no matter what, I owe you my gratitude." Yang Kai waved his hand. "It's no big deal." Xia Lin Lang fell silent for a moment before she looked up at him and asked, "Did you need me for something?" "Yes. The thing is," Yang Kai sat up straight and looked at her seriously, "I need you to do me a favor." "What do you need?" She was puzzled. He explained, "You heard my negotiations with Cheng Yang during the day. If I cooperate with him, every universe cave heaven or universe paradise we discover will mean large amounts of treasures falling into our hands. There might even be all sorts of rare or extinct items. Greed brings out the worst in people, and although Cheng Yang is an 8th order open heaven realm master, I cannot trust him on his word alone. I need somebody I trust to help me supervise the process, lest he engage in mischief without my knowledge. It is not convenient for me to stay in the shattered heaven for long, so after considering everything, I came to the conclusion that I can only ask you for help." Xia Lin Lang exclaimed in astonishment, "You don't trust Cheng Yang, but you trust me?" Yang Kai smiled, "You and I have faced life and death together multiple times. I have faith in you." Xia Lin Lang stared at him calmly for a moment before she burst into laughter. "You've already said so much, so I can only do my best to help you." Yang Kai nodded, "Of course, I will not ask you for help without giving you anything in return. My agreement with Cheng Yang is a 50/50th share. You can take 10% out of my share." "How is that?" Xia Lin Lang simply shook her head. "If you didn't come here in person, I would have suffered a tragic fate. It was also you who brought me out of the shattered space back then. This Xia Lin Lang might not be a righteous woman, but I will never forget how you saved my life twice now. I will help you manage your earnings and hand them over to you untouched when you return to the shattered heaven in the future. As for my compensation, you've already paid me, haven't you?" Needless to say, she was referring to the fully explored universe cave heaven that he previously requested from Cheng Yang. To the cultivators living in the shattered heaven, having a safe place to stay was their greatest refuge. "But, in what capacity do I perform this task?" Xia Lin Lang asked. Yang Kai briefly pondered before saying, "I am Voidland's lord. If you don't mind, I can appoint you as Voidland's high-rank guest elder right here and now. What do you think?" She pursed her lips into a smile. "I don't mind. I'm just afraid of causing trouble for you." "That won't be a problem." Yang Kai shook his head. Raising his teacup, he gestured at her. So, have we come to an agreement? Yes, we have. Xia Lin Lang raised her glass in a toast, and they drank to their agreement. After seeing Xia Lin Lang off, Yang Kai sat down cross-legged, immersed his mind in his small universe, and manifested his soul clone. He quickly figured out the situation in his small universe with a single thought. Several years had passed since he left the shattered space, and during this period, he had been too busy to pay attention to what was happening inside his small universe, though he did try to keep an eye on his two disciples, Zhao Yue and Zhao Yibai. Over the years, Zhao Yue had advanced to the transcendent realm from the immortal ascension realm and was on the verge of advancing into the saint realm even though her cultivation was constantly being suppressed. Her aptitude was simply heaven-defying. Furthermore, the world energy in his small universe world was so rich that her cultivation continued to improve slowly even if she did not cultivate. What's more, the flow of time in his small universe was twice that of the outside world, so the several years' delay that he experienced in the outside world meant that nearly 8 years had passed in his small universe. On the other hand, Zhao Yibai, whom Yang Kai initially had high hopes for and expected to inherit his legacy one day, seemed like a worthless potato in comparison. After returning from their training experience, Zhao Yue had advanced to the immortal ascension boundary and after less than a decade was on the verge of breaking through to the saint realm. In contrast, Zhao Yibai had only just advanced from the Qi transformation realm to the separation and reunion boundary and was about to reach the true element boundary. Although they had both advanced by nearly 2 great realms, Zhao Yue was doing so in much higher realms. Moreover, she had accomplished that feat whilst under suppression. Meanwhile, Zhao Yibai had spared no effort in his cultivation. The gap between them could be seen at a glance. Despite Zhao Yibai's slow advancement in cultivation, there was one aspect that satisfied Yang Kai immensely. The young boy had an unparalleled affinity for the Tao of space. Every time Zhao Yibai cultivated, Yang Kai could more or less detect signs of the space Tao essence in his small universe being stimulated. Yang Kai had never told them about the situation outside of his small universe, but now that they were on the way back to the star boundary, it was time to give them more information about the outside world lest they fail to adapt once he brought them back. When he summoned the both of them, the 2 little ones were naturally surprised to see their honored master and quickly bowed in greeting. He briefly told them about the 3,000 worlds, followed by information on Void Land. Lastly, he told them about the situation in the star boundary. He also told them that the star boundary was the best place for them to cultivate before they reached the open heaven realm. Zhao Yue and Zhao Yibai listened with great fascination, looking absolutely entranced by his tales. They never imagined that the world outside could be so vast and interesting. After spending half a day explaining the situation in the outside world to them, he also answered some of their questions about their daily cultivation. Only then did he prepare to leave. Honored Master, Zhao Yibai suddenly called out to Yang Kai. Yang Kai looked back. Will my mother and my grandma also go to the star boundary? Zhao Yibai asked. Yang Kai shook his head. Both your mother and your grandma are ordinary mortals who have never cultivated. If they are in my small universe, I can ensure that they remain alive and well so long as I do not perish. However, they will not live long once they leave my small universe. Zhao Yibai's expression turned a little sad. He had guessed that the reason his mother and his grandma remained so young and beautiful was related to his honored master. His grandma was already well over 100 years old, but her body remained healthy and her hair even turned from white to black. Be that as it may, he could not help feeling a little depressed when he heard those words being spoken out loud. If you have time on your hands, you should go down the mountain to spend more time with your mother and your grandma. If you teach them some breathing techniques, they can use them to enhance their health even if they have passed the best age to cultivate. In addition, your small universe will change from ethereal to corporeal once your cultivation reaches the 7th order open heaven realm. When you reach that stage one day, you can transfer your mother and your grandma into your own small universe. Then, you can meet them whenever you want. Zhao Yibai immediately shouted excitedly, this disciple will work hard to cultivate. I will not let you down, honored master. Zhao Yue swiftly kicked him. Honored master has already left. He scratched his head and chuckled in embarrassment. I'm sure honored master can hear me. We are inside his small universe after all. He knows everything. She glanced sideways at him, including how there was a junior sister who waited for you at the foot of the mountain and handed you a letter recently. Zhao Yibai turned pale with fright. You saw that, Xiao Wei. Me. She clasped her hands behind her back and turned her back towards him. 3 days later, a portal opened wide and a large number of people rushed out from within. Cheng Yang and Yang Kai stood side by side while Hong Hu stood close behind them. Further behind came Xia Lin Lang, Qin Fen, and the others. Bringing up the rear were dozens of Cheng Yang's subordinates. Yang Kai glanced behind him. You sure have a mighty army with the finest of arms under you, Divine Monarch. Cheng Yang was in the 8th Order Open Heaven Realm, and there were 2 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters under his command. Furthermore, he had more than 10 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters while there were several dozen 5th and 4th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters below them. No one was below the 4th Order Open Heaven Realm. Such a lineup was something that not even the current Voidland could compare to. Of course, these people were nothing if Zhu Juyin and Old Man Bai Shi were included in Voidland's forces. Cheng Yang alone had such an impressive army under his command, so it was reasonable to assume the other 2 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in the Shattered Heaven had equivalent forces. Just how many Open Heaven Realm Masters were hidden in the Shattered Heaven? Needless to say, Yang Kai was the one to request for so many people to be mobilized at once. He could not afford to linger in the Shattered Heaven for too long, so he could only ask Cheng Yang to dispatch more people. After hearing what Yang Kai said, Cheng Yang chuckled. Everyone knows that the cave heavens and paradises have as many masters as there are clouds in the sky, but nobody knows that there are many capable people in the Shattered Heaven, too. It's just that the existence of the people in the Shattered Heaven are secrets that can never be brought to light. Yang Kai's heart trembled. Do you know the reason why the cave heavens and paradises make things so difficult for high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters like yourself? Cheng Yang burst into laughter. Will you believe me if I say that I don't know much either, little brother? Yang Kai nodded. Of course, I believe you. Cheng Yang nodded. There are rumors saying that the cave heavens and paradises do this to strengthen their dominance over the 3,000 worlds. That's why all the cultivators who advance into the high-rank Open Heaven realm but do not originate from the cave heavens and paradises will be invited to join them. They either become part of the cave heavens and paradises or they disappear without a trace. But, this monarch does not believe that the cave heavens and paradises, which have endured for countless eons and remained so powerful and prosperous, could be so spineless and underhanded. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4721, 5 Portals. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Likewise, this was something he had always thought to be strange. The cave heavens and paradises boasted an inheritance that was passed down for countless generations. Not to mention, there were many high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters in those sects to begin with. Why would they need to use such despicable means to strengthen their dominance over others? It might have been a plausible reason if it involved only 1 or 2 of the cave heavens and paradises. However, all 108 cave heavens and paradises carried the same attitude. It was only natural for people to wonder about the actual reason. This monarch has always believed that the major cave heavens and paradises are hiding some huge secret. Moreover, this secret is something only the high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters have the qualification to know. That is why all the high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters who do not originate from the cave heavens and paradises tend to suffer a tragic fate. There are no exceptions. Why else would we hide in the Shattered Heaven for so many years? The 3,000 worlds is vast and magnificent, so why wouldn't we wish to travel the world and witness the wonderful sights? A secret, Yang Kai murmured under his breath. Although he could not determine whether Cheng Yang's speculation was true or false, his limited knowledge of the situation indicated that there was some truth to those words. Cheng Yang turned to the side and smiled. Little brother, you are different from this monarch. Your potential is great. If you can figure out the truth one day, please let me know. It will answer all the questions that have been swirling around in this monarch's heart for so many years. Good. Yang Kai nodded. Now that he was in the 6th Order Open Heaven realm, advancing into the 7th Order Open Heaven realm was something in the near future. Despite bearing the title of Yin-Yang Cave Heaven's son-in-law, he was not actually from any of the cave heavens and paradises. There was no saying whether he might actually learn the secret mentioned by Cheng Yang when he advanced into the seventh-order open heaven realm. A sudden thought struck him. The proprietress had been in retreat for so many years now. It was certain that she would advance into the seventh-order open heaven realm when she came out of retreat, so what kind of difficulties would she face at that time? If the cave heavens and paradises really did come forward, what would happen if he refused their demands? Several days later, a group of people came to a stop in the void. Cheng Yang carefully observed his surroundings before he nodded at Yang Kai in confirmation. If this monarch is not mistaken, there's a high probability that a portal is hidden here. When this monarch passed through this place in the past, the portal showed faint signs of opening only to vanish in the next instant. This monarch has been searching for a long time, but my efforts have proven to be in vain. That's why I could only mark down the location for the time being. Over the years, I would come here from time to investigate only to come up empty-handed. It's up to you now, little brother. Yang Kai nodded and immediately manipulated his space principles. Just like the previous occasion, a layer of ripples that were visible to the naked eye gradually spread out into the surroundings with him at the center. Everywhere the ripples passed, space would become distorted. The several dozen subordinates under Cheng Yang's command watched with interest. The same was true even for Cheng Yang. Although he had vaguely seen some of the scenes when he was hiding in his home previously, that experience was far less profound than this time. The layer of ripples created by the space principles was undoubtedly the best wayfinding stones in the void. If there was a portal hidden in this place, the ripples that swept over the portal were bound to produce a different reaction compared to the other areas. This scene amazed Cheng Yang greatly. Space principles sure are useful in this situation. If only I was proficient in the Tao of space, I'm certain I could discover all the universe cave heavens and universe paradises hidden in the shattered heaven with enough time. It had to be said that these universe cave heavens and universe paradises were relics left behind in ancient times, so there was a high possibility that valuable treasures were hidden in them. After all, both the profound fish that appeared 3,000 years ago and the world spring that appeared recently had emerged from universe cave heavens left behind in ancient times. 2 of the 4 universe pillars had already appeared, so who could say whether more would be found? An incense stick later, Yang Kai abruptly turned to look in a certain direction. There was a slightly different fluctuation in the void coming from that direction. Cheng Yang followed Yang Kai's gaze, but could not detect any anomalies. Nevertheless, another incense later, with Yang Kai diligently focusing his space principles in that direction, the anomaly in the void was finally revealed. It became obvious that there was a large area that was different from the surrounding space. There is one here after all, Cheng Yang exclaimed in excitement. Yang Kai replied lightly, I wonder whether it is a universe cave heaven or a universe paradise. If it was a universe cave heaven, then it was the legacy left behind by an 8th-order open heaven realm master or even a 9th-order open heaven realm master. If it was a universe paradise, then it was the legacy of a 7th-order open heaven realm master, so the value would not be as great as the former. Even so, every single universe cave heaven or universe paradise would at least contain the Tao essence cultivated by the original master. Yang Kai had devoured the Spear Tao essence in Pear Flower Cave Heaven and improved his mastery over the Spear Tao by leaps and bounds. These Tao essences were undoubtedly a huge treasure for cultivators who cultivated that particular Tao. Another hour passed by, and a huge gaping hole suddenly appeared in the void, becoming a black hole with a clear aura of a small universe radiating from within. The portal was open. Yang Kai and Cheng Yang exchanged a glance with each other before the 2 of them moved at the same time and plunged into the portal. Hong Hu and Xia Lin Lang followed closely behind. Meanwhile, the rest stood outside waiting. An hour later, 4 figures emerged. It was Yang Kai and the others. Sir, what is the situation inside? One of the 7th-order open heaven realm masters under Cheng Yang quickly asked about the situation. Cheng Yang replied, This is a universe paradise. The former master was probably proficient in the sword Tao. The sword Tao essence is quite abundant. After saying that, he picked out a few people and instructed, You will stay behind to explore this universe paradise. Any harvests must be organized and recorded. Pocketing anything privately will not be forgiven. Yes. Those people accepted the orders. Afterward, he turned to Yang Kai and added, I will leave the rest to you, little brother Yang. Yang Kai nodded and reached out his hand to cover the portal. Under the urging of space principles, the obviously abnormal void gradually repaired itself and became indistinguishable from the surrounding environment after a while. Taking out a token, he injected his aura and engraved some space principles into it. I've used a secret technique to conceal the portal so that outsiders will not be aware of it even if they pass by this place. You can explore this place with peace of mind. In order to enter and exit through the portal, you will need this token. Recklessly trespassing into this place will most likely get you exiled to the void. The expressions of the open heaven realm masters picked out by Cheng Yang immediately became unpleasant. Yang Kai's actions clearly indicated that he did not trust them. Otherwise, why would he create the token? Even the eyes of Cheng Yang flashed slightly at those words. He never expected Yang Kai to pull out such a card. Yang Kai ignored them, however, and simply handed the token to Xia Lin Lang before saying, gather up some people to stay behind to help with the exploration. Xia Lin Lang nodded and glanced at Qin Fen. Qin Fen, you stay here. Qin Fen took the token and quickly said, yes. Yang Kai turned to the side and looked at Cheng Yang. The next spot? Cheng Yang gave a slight smile. Please follow me, little brother. They set off again with great energy while Qin Fen and Cheng Yang's subordinates stayed behind, watching the group's departure. It was not until the departing group was out of sight that they finally entered the universe paradise under Qin Fen's lead. Cheng Yang had been living in the shattered heaven for over 10,000 years. He spent most of his time in seclusion, sometimes spending up to several hundred or even 1,000 years in retreat. Even so, when it came to familiarity with the shattered heaven, there was nobody better than him except maybe the two other 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. After so many years, it was only natural for him to know various bits of information that other people might not know. For example, the locations where the portals of various universe paradises and universe cave heaven might be hidden. Under Cheng Yang's guidance, Yang Kai searched no less than 10 locations in the short span of 3 months. All of these locations were suspected to have hidden universe cave heavens or universe paradises. In the end, they discovered a total of 5 portals. The other 5 locations came up empty. Nevertheless, a success rate of 50% was very high. It could be said that Cheng Yang's information was extremely accurate. No matter how proficient Yang Kai was in the Tao of space, he would never have found any of these portals within the shattered heaven without Cheng Yang's guidance. During his escape with Xia Lin Lang previously, he had tried looking for a hidden universe cave heaven or universe paradise to seek refuge, but his efforts had been fruitless. Among these 5 portals, 3 of them were universe paradises while the other 2 were universe cave heavens. The harvest was bound to be plentiful if all of them could be fully explored and developed. Yang Kai had nothing to worry about after leaving Xia Lin Lang to supervise the proceedings here. Regardless of the valuable treasures that might be discovered in these 5 locations, he and Cheng Yang would split the gains equally among them. As for where Xia Lin Lang would eventually decide to choose as her residence, that would be up to her own consideration. Little brother, are you sure you don't want to stay in the shattered heaven for a few more days? After seeing what Yang Kai could do, Cheng Yang was reluctant to let him leave so easily. I will be honest with you, little brother. I'm certain that Ku Yang and Tian Luo also know where some likely portals are located. If you can stay for a little while, this monarch can ask them about these locations. The names Ku Yang and Tian Luo that he mentioned were the names of the other 2 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in the Shattered Heaven. There was a total of 3 8th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in the Shattered Heaven, and while they could not claim to be close friends, there was bound to be some communication between them. Yang Kai smiled. There's no need to be so anxious, Divine Monarch. I will probably visit the Shattered Heaven again in the future. If you wish, you might as well make some inquiries first. It won't be too late for us to cooperate again when I return next time. Cheng Yang raised his eyebrows. That's a promise then. Yang Kai nodded and turned to look at Xia Lin Lang. If anything comes up, Send Qin Fen to Voidland to find me. Xia Linlang nodded. I will. Take care. Only then did Yang Kai turn to Cheng Yang and cupped his fist. Until we meet again. Come back soon, little brother. This monarch will be waiting to hear from you. Yang Kai shot a glance at Hong Hu, and the two of them rushed into the depths of the void together. After watching the two figures disappearing into the distance, Cheng Yang finally smiled and said, Young Lady Xia, have you decided which universe cave heaven you want yet? Xia Linlang replied, Not yet. I wish to have a better look at them first. As it should be. You have to shop around before buying something, even more so when it comes to choosing a place to stay. Take your time to compare between them. You only need to inform this monarch once you have decided. Since little brother Yang and I have an agreement, I will not go back on my word. You should also rest assured. I will definitely keep my men tight-lipped about the location you choose as your residence. I will never reveal a word to the outside world. Xia Linlang gave an elegant bow. Many thanks for your kindness, divine monarch. Two figures transformed into streams of light that sped through the void as swiftly as the wind. A month later, Yang Kai and Hong Hu finally came out of the shattered heaven. It was not until this moment that Hong Hu, who only recently left the ancestral land after living there for her entire life, could be regarded as having seen the splendor of the 3,000 worlds. Unlike the desolation found everywhere in the shattered heaven, each great territory that they passed through was filled with countless twinkling stars and flickering lights. Moreover, the vitality nurtured by the many universe worlds and spirit provinces could clearly be felt. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4722, Purple Heaven Palace. Returning to Void Land from the shattered heaven was a long journey that took an extensive amount of time. That was because it was Hong Hu's first time leaving the ancestral land, so she had never left her imprint in any of the universe temples located throughout the great territories before. They had no choice but to travel through each great territory with their strength alone. As a result, the time spent on their journey was undoubtedly longer than Yang Kai's initial trip. Yang Kai did not return directly to Void Land either. Instead, he first took a trip to Great Evolution territory. He had not forgotten about the palace artifact he previously commissioned Grandmaster Ma Fan to refine. So many years had passed since then, so the palace artifact should have been refined by now. Ever since witnessing the wonders of Heavenly Sword Union's Heavenly Sword Palace, he had been green with envy towards those with palace artifacts. Although the Dragon Clan's Crystal Palace could be said to be a palace artifact, and a supremely high-end one at that, it was related to the Dragon Clan's cultivation and inheritance, so it was not something he could wield carelessly. That was why he left the Crystal Palace in 4 Phoenix Pavilion before he departed from the ancestral land. Inside Great Evolution territory, Yang Kai found the portal of Great Evolution Paradise with ease. Cupping his fist, he shouted in a loud voice, Grandmaster, this junior is here per our agreement. Please open the way. Following that, the portal opened. Yang Kai and Hong Hu slipped inside and a figure came to greet them. It was a young and beautiful girl. Junior Sister Center. Yang Kai nodded. He recognized that person as one of the remnants of Great Evolution Paradise known as Center, who was in the 4th Order Open Heaven Realm. During his last visit here, he had gotten to know several Open Heaven Realm Masters of Great Evolution Paradise, and Center was one of them. There was also another person called Nalan Lu Shui, who was in the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm. At the moment, Nalan Lu Shui was nowhere to be seen. There was no saying where she had gone. Senior Brother Yang. Center returned the greeting and shot a curious glance at Hong Hu, who was standing behind Yang Kai. Is the Grandmaster here? Yang Kai asked. She nodded. He's here. Old Ancestor has been waiting for you. What you asked for has been completed, but what? A feeling of panic gripped Yang Kai's heart as he secretly wondered whether something had gone wrong with his palace artifact. She whispered, Old Ancestor has been in a terrible mood recently. Yang Kai failed to stifle his laughter as he asked, why? A bunch of hateful people arrived. Center pouted, you'll see for yourself once you've met Old Ancestor. While speaking, she took the lead and showed them the way. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling surprised. Not many people knew about the remnants of Great Evolution Paradise. He only knew about them from the proprietress, so who would come here? Not to mention, with Grandmaster Ma Fan's cultivation and status, who could put him in a terrible mood? The pair followed behind Center and soon arrived at Grandmaster Ma Fan's personal meditation area. Before they even got close though, Hong Hu whispered in Yang Kai's ear, "Be careful, there are quite a few powerful little ones inside the room." Yang Kai raised his brow at those words. Hong Hu was on par with a top 8th order open heaven realm master in strength, therefore, people that she would consider powerful would not be just any stray cat or dog by the side of the road. They were definitely in the 7th order open heaven realm or above. What's more, high-rank open heaven realm masters could only be from the cave heavens and paradises. Center stopped in front of them and turned around to speak. "Old ancestor is inside. Please enter on your own, senior brother." "Many thanks, junior sister Center." She then darted her eyes back around a bit before saying, "If you really want to thank me, then please speak to old ancestor on my behalf. Bring me along when you return to the star boundary. It has been so long since I last met senior sister Lan. I miss her greatly. I'll do my best." Yang Kai smiled. Center pumped her fists and cheered for him. "I'm counting on you." After Center departed, Yang Kai finally took a step forward with Hong Hu. Many eyes instantly turned to look at him as soon as he entered the hall. Yang Kai looked up and couldn't help revealing a look of surprise. Staring at one of the old men, he laughed. "Elder Yu?" The old man was Yu Changdao of Free and Unfettered Paradise. He was also High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder on paper. Having taken a fancy to a baby with the innate Dao body back in the star boundary, Yu Changdao had wanted to take the child on as his legacy disciple. However, the baby's mother had insisted that her deceased husband's dying wish was for the child to join High Heaven Palace. No matter how he tried to persuade her, she had refused to change her mind. In the end, Yang Kai came up with a brilliant solution to the problem. He invited Yu Changdao into High Heaven Palace to become the supreme high-rank guest elder. In this way, the child would remain as a High Heaven Palace disciple even though his master was Yu Changdao. Not only would Yu Changdao get his wish, but High Heaven Palace would also receive an additional 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master as a supreme high-rank guest elder. It could be said to be a win-win solution where everybody was happy. After Yang Kai left the star boundary, the first thing he did was to study and repair several broken universe temples scattered across the 3,000 worlds. Next, he went to the Black Prison to transport ore stars from its depths to its periphery. Then, he cultivated inside the astral wind divine ability in the shattered heaven. When he obtained the world spring, he was pursued relentlessly and entered the ancestral land as a result. Inside the ancestral land, he unlocked the demon sealing land and improved his dragon vein to become a grand dragon. In the blink of an eye, several decades had passed. Yang Kai never imagined that he would run into Yu Changdao here, and it was not just him either. The other people in the room were also very familiar to him. They were the foreign affairs envoys from the major cave heavens and paradises who should be watching over the star boundary. Leaving aside Yu Changdao of Free and Unfettered Paradise, there was also Hong Xiongling of Azure Void Cave Heaven, Duan Ruishan of Clearmind Cave Heaven, and Lu Zhenyang of Azure Nether Paradise. Hong Xiongling had persistently tried to matchmake Yang Kai in the past, so Yang Kai had a deep impression of the old man as a result. There were a total of 4 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, and each of them was more or less the representatives of their respective cave heavens and paradises. These 4 people were no strangers to Yang Kai either, as they had all gone to the star boundary and met him before. On the other hand, Grandmaster Ma Fan was nowhere to be seen. Sect Master Yu Changdao stood up. Although his cultivation was higher than Yang Kai's, he still held the title of High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder. He could also be regarded as part of High Heaven Palace, so it was only natural for him to be a bit polite towards Yang Kai. Hong Xiongling laughed heartily. "Young boy." "Senior Hong." Yang Kai cupped his fist and asked curiously, "Why are you here?" Hong Xiongling chuckled. "Why can't we be here?" "What about you, kid? Why did you come here?" Yang Kai replied, I previously commissioned the Grandmaster to refine an artifact for me, so I am here to collect it as promise. Hong Xiongling nodded and exclaimed, "The World Tree sure is amazing. I can't believe it actually made the Iron Rooster move. I was wondering why he brought a group of his disciples to the star boundary several dozen years ago. It turns out that you had already made a deal. Who are you calling an Iron Rooster?" A dissatisfied voice rang out as Grandmaster Ma Fan walked out of the room in the back and glared at Hong Xiongling. Hong Xiongling slapped his mouth lightly and shamelessly responded, "I was talking about myself." Grandmaster Ma Fan coldly snorted. Only then did he turn to look in Yang Kai's direction. It was just that he did not look at Yang Kai, but rather at Hong Hu, who was standing behind him, asking in a solemn tone, "This is Yu Chang Dao." Hong Xiongling and the others had also been curious about Hong Hu's identity. Despite being in the Seventh Order Open Heaven realm, they couldn't help feeling a slight pressure from the woman in front of them, even though the other party was not even exerting the slightest bit of strength. Under these circumstances, it was only natural that they were concerned about her identity. It was just that Yang Kai did not take the initiative to introduce her, so they could not ask. Although they could not ask, Grandmaster Ma Fan was forced to. He was the master of this place after all. Besides, he would not have revealed himself if he had not detected this woman's unique aura. Yang Kai quickly introduced Hong Hu. "This is Senior Hong Hu." Afterward, he introduced everybody else to Hong Hu, one by one. Hong Hu smiled and nodded. Yu Chang Dao raised a graying brow at those words. "I've heard that there are 5 phoenixes. Red Phoenix, Azure Qing Luan, Yellow Yuan Chu, Purple Yu Zhuo, and White Hong Hu. Your aura seems a little different." He only had this association after seeing that she was dressed in white. She smiled and said, "I am the White Hong Hu you're thinking of." Everybody turned pale without exception. Yu Chang Dao said solemnly, "Forgive us for our disrespect." Meanwhile, Hong Xiongling asked seriously, "Why did the Phoenix clan return?" Hong Hu looked at him in confusion. "What?" He frowned. "Didn't you return from that place?" "What place?" she queried. "I came from the Divine Spirit's ancestral land in the Shattered Heaven." The high-rank Open Heaven realm masters in the hall exchanged glances before Hong Xiongling quickly said, "I must have made a mistake. Please forgive me." Hong Hu gave Hong Xiongling a strange look and seemed pensive. Likewise, Yang Kai looked confused. When Hong Hu revealed her identity earlier, they had such a look of despair on their faces that one would have thought that the sky was falling. When Hong Hu explained that she was from the ancestral land in the Shattered Heaven though, they became extremely relieved instead. "Where is this place that Hong Xiongling mentioned? What does it have to do with the Phoenix clan?" Just as Yang Kai was pondering these questions, Grandmaster Ma Fan stretched out his hand and tossed out something. An object came flying towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai instinctively caught the object, and when he looked down, he saw that it was a miniature palace countless times smaller than normal. His eyes immediately lit up at the sight and he exclaimed in delight, "Grandmaster, is this Purple Heaven Palace?" Grandmaster Ma Fan replied casually, "It can be said that it lives up to its name." Refining this item cost an arm and a leg, however, these materials were provided by High Heaven Palace and Voidland. As for the details of how many resources were used, you only need to ask your head manager for the details. I also integrated the Purple Heaven Divine Thunder that you left with me back then. You can slowly explore the specific effects after you finish refining it. Yang Kai played with the palace lovingly and said, "Many thanks, Grandmaster." The Crystal Palace could not be used carelessly, so it could be said that the Purple Heaven Palace was his first palace artifact. As for how much this palace artifact had cost, Yang Kai currently owned a first-class star city and a large stake in a superstar city. He also occupied the New Great Territory and the Black Territory, so how could he be troubled by something like cost? What's more, Cheng Yang and Xia Linlang were currently exploring the 5 universe cave heavens and universe paradises. Once these places had been fully explored, Yang Kai would gain yet another source of income. The Voidland of today was no longer the same Voidland that used to worry about resources. There was an abundance in the storage and distribution of cultivation materials. "Your skills are amazing indeed, Grandmaster," Duan Rui Shan of Clearmind Cave Heaven praised. As one of the 36 cave heavens, it was a given that Clearmind Cave Heaven had its own skilled artisans. It was not difficult for them to refine a palace artifact, but doing so as skillfully as Grandmaster Ma Fan was not easy. The palace artifact he refined was so small and exquisite that it could be held in one hand. That was the gap in their skills. Moreover, it was a gap that was absolutely impossible to overcome. Yang Kai was happily playing with the palace artifact that Grandmaster Ma Fan had named the Purple Heaven Palace when he heard Grandmaster Ma Fan's voice ringing throughout the room. "Allow me to be honest with you all. I am now High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder. I cannot make the final decision regarding your request. You should discuss it with the sect master instead." Yang Kai's delighted expression turned to surprise as he instinctively felt as though he had been tricked. It was an ominous feeling indeed. Martial Peak, Chapter 4723, Good Fortune Divine Furnace. As an artifact refining Grandmaster, Ma Fan naturally had superb skills. There were only a handful of people throughout the vast 3,000 worlds whose artifact refining skills could compare with his. When others refined a palace artifact, it was almost a certainty that several dozens or even hundreds of artifact refiners would need to work together to complete the project. Even if their skills were superior, it would still be a collaboration between a dozen people at the least. In contrast, Grandmaster Ma Fan had refined the Purple Heaven Palace all by himself from start to finish. The number of people across the 3,000 worlds who could achieve such a feat could be counted on one hand. Therefore, an artifact refiner with such superb skills like him was a rare and precious talent for any of the cave heavens or paradises. Forget Yang Kai's yearning to recruit him, even the 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises coveted him. It was not that nobody had tried to recruit him. In fact, almost every cave heaven and paradise had sent representatives to recruit him over the past many years. Even though they offered generous and bountiful rewards, Ma Fan rejected every single offer without exception. In his opinion, Great Evolution Paradise was his route. He was born as part of Great Evolution Paradise, and he would die as part of Great Evolution Paradise. Yang Kai had the same idea at the beginning, so he tried to recruit Grandmaster Ma Fan as a supreme high-rank guest elder of High Heaven Palace. After gaining insight into the current situation of Great Evolution Paradise, he even used the existence of the World Tree as bait to lure Grandmaster Ma Fan into working for him. It was just that Grandmaster Ma Fan never accepted the offer to serve as a supreme high-rank guest elder, though he did agree to refine the palace artifact for Yang Kai. In this matter, Yang Kai had never pressured him into making a decision either. Who could have known that Grandmaster Ma Fan would make such a shocking statement when Yang Kai was completely clueless about the current situation? For that reason, Yang Kai's first reaction was not joy, as he felt that something extremely troublesome had fallen into his hands. He was still reeling from the shock when Yu Changdao looked at him with bright eyes. "You're part of the family, Grandmaster? That's great. Sect Master, we need to take good care of our family." Meanwhile, Hong Xiongling went one step further. He stood up and walked over to Yang Kai. "Young boy, I have a disciple in the 6th Order Open Heaven realm. Not only is she as beautiful as a flower, but she also has a gentle temperament. It's just that she has yet to meet a suitable life companion. More importantly, she has never been exposed to love and romance. She has always been obsessed with cultivation, so much so that she is showing signs of cultivation dissonance. I believe she needs a young and handsome man like you to save her." Before Hong Xiongling could finish speaking, Duan Ruishan slapped his palm on Hong Xiongling's face and pushed the latter aside. "Sect Master Yang, feel free to mention any conditions you want. I will not refuse as long as your demands are within Clearmind Cave Heaven's abilities to fulfill." Lu Zhenyang of Azure Nether Paradise also chimed in. "Does High Heaven Palace need another supreme high-rank guest elder?" This Lu has always felt a sense of kinship with High Heaven Palace. "It's a pity that you've been away for such a long time, Sect Master Yang. I could not join even though I wanted to join High Heaven Palace so badly." All 4 high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters stared at Yang Kai with burning gazes, like starving ghosts faced with a table full of delicacies. They practically scrambled over each other to speak in their excitement. Yang Kai couldn't help feeling dumbfounded as he hesitantly asked, What are you talking about? Seeing Yang Kai's confused expression, which did not seem fake, the 4 high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters couldn't help looking at each other. Hong Xiongling was the one who eventually asked, Kid, you still don't know? What should I know? Yang Kai countered, I just returned from the Shattered Heaven and only came here to retrieve my artifact from Grandmaster Ma Fan. Lu Zhenyang frowned and turned to look at Grandmaster Ma Fan. Grandmaster, can Sect Master Yang really call the shots on this matter? He doesn't seem to know anything. Grandmaster Ma Fan just sat there and watched them with a smile. Reaching out his hand, he took out a wine bottle and took a sip before he nodded. Of course, he can. Well, even if he couldn't before, now that I've said so, he has the authority to make the decision. The 4 masters' gazes became scorching hot once more. Yang Kai's expression turned bitter. Grandmaster, just what is this situation? The least you could have done was to inform me about it beforehand. Grandmaster Ma Fan pondered in silence for a moment before he stood up. Follow me. After saying that, he strode outside. Yang Kai put the Purple Heaven Palace away and hurriedly followed. Hong Hu wanted to come along, but he waved her away and asked her to stay behind. Following Grandmaster Ma Fan out of the Grand Hall, he walked deeper into the void. Grandmaster Ma Fan's voice came from the front. Great Evolution Paradise has 2 core treasures. One of them is a replica of the Universe Furnace. The genuine Universe Furnace is practically impossible to find. Moreover, it contains the universe essence and produces innate Open Heaven pills. Consuming innate Open Heaven pills will allow any Open Heaven Realm Master to break through their shackles and reach the next order, without any limitations or drawbacks. The Open Heaven pills that are commonly used in the world today were created by the ancient great experts who extensively studied the Universe Furnace's Open Heaven pills and consequently developed a pill recipe based on their research. The genuine Universe Furnace shakes the very foundation of the 3,000 worlds every time it appears in the world, but nobody is capable of possessing it. The ancestors of Great Evolution Paradise were fortunate enough to see the Universe Furnace in person and threw themselves into long years of research. As a result, they spent countless years and resources to create a replica of the Universe Furnace. Although it is not nearly as profound as the real Universe Furnace, it is quite extraordinary in and of itself. This old master performs artifact refining with its help. You've seen that for yourself. Yang Kai nodded. When he first came here with the proprietress to commission Grandmaster Ma Fan for an artifact, he had seen the latter activating the power of the sun's true fire to refine an artifact using the replica of the Universe Furnace. The second treasure is known as the Good Fortune Divine Furnace. Grandmaster Ma Fan's voice became solemn. Good Fortune Divine Furnace? Yang Kai raised his brow at those words. This one is not a replica or imitation, but a naturally formed treasurer. There was a sense of pride in Grandmaster Ma Fan's voice. According to the records written by my ancestors, the Good Fortune Divine Furnace suddenly appeared in Great Evolution Paradise one day. It can be considered a gift from the heavens. The world's blessings are infinitely mysterious after all. Yang Kai asked curiously, what makes the Good Fortune Divine Furnace so special? Grandmaster Ma Fan replied, you'll know when you see it for yourself. Yang Kai did not ask any more questions. A short while later, they arrived in the depths of the void. There was a barrier shrouding over this area and Yang Kai could sense an extremely hostile aura before he even approached, naturally terrifying him. It had to be said that even though he was only in the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm, he could rival a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master in strength when he transformed into his Grand Dragon form. Therefore, for him to have such a reaction only went to show the ferocity of the barrier. This place was originally Great Evolution Paradise's highest-level restricted area. Non-members of Great Evolution Paradise would never be allowed to enter. However, with the passage of time, Great Evolution Paradise has become desolate, so there is no reason to hold on to such rules anymore. Grandmaster Ma Fan explained while taking out a crude and simple token. Forming a seal with his hands, a mysterious light penetrated the token before shooting out and transforming into a tunnel of light. Grandmaster Ma Fan took the lead to enter the passage, and Yang Kai followed closely behind. The two of them walked along the tunnel that seemed tens of thousands of kilometers long, and at the end of the passage, a three-legged furnace that was as tall as a person and carved with intricate patterns that covered the entire surface entered Yang Kai's vision. Is this the good fortune divine furnace? Yang Kai observed the furnace curiously. At first glance, there was nothing particularly strange or special about the good fortune divine furnace. The only thing that caught Yang Kai's attention was the grey fog that permeated the interior of the furnace. It was extremely strange, and when his divine sense penetrated the grey fog, it was like a rock sinking deep into the sea. The grey fog filled the entire good fortune divine furnace. Moreover, it crept about slowly like a living thing. Yang Kai frowned slightly and asked, "Is it alive?" For a moment, he could swear that he detected a peculiar vitality from the good fortune divine furnace. Grandmaster Ma Fan shook his head. "It is neither alive nor dead." Even the ancestors of Great Evolution Paradise could not determine whether the good fortune divine furnace was considered a living thing or not. They couldn't even figure out why it appeared here in the first place. There were no signs before its sudden appearance, and nobody could move the furnace after it appeared here. What a strange thing. Yang Kai observed for a while before he asked, "What is so special about the good fortune divine furnace?" Grandmaster Ma Fan said, "I'll show you." While speaking, he made a sweeping motion with his hand, and a large number of materials that exuded rich wood element power were thrown into the good fortune divine furnace. Yang Kai could clearly tell that the wood element materials were of rather good quality. All of them were fifth-order materials. Furthermore, there were also quite a lot of them, as many as 10. After the many fifth-order wood element materials were thrown into the good fortune divine furnace, the grey fog wriggled and swallowed them whole. In the next moment, they vanished out of sight. Grandmaster Ma Fan waited quietly for a while before he took out another fifth-order wood element material and threw it into the grey fog. There was still no movement, so he tossed in another. After repeating his actions 4 more times, the grey fog suddenly began writhing violently. Even the color of the fog changed. The grey and dirty-looking fog suddenly became crimson red. In the next moment, the red fog shrunk abruptly before expanding violently again, and an object came flying out of the fog. Grandmaster Ma Fan was clearly prepared for this situation. He reached out his hand and caught the object lightly before glancing it over and nodding, "Seems like my luck isn't too bad today." Then, he casually tossed the object to Yang Kai. Yang Kai caught the object and carefully examined it, his eyes contracting slightly at the sight. "A sixth-order material?" Grandmaster Ma Fan affirmed, "This is what makes the good fortune divine furnace special." Yang Kai stared at Grandmaster Ma Fan in dumbfounded amazement. "How is that possible?" Grandmaster Ma Fan replied, "If you're asking me how this works, then I don't know either. Even the ancestors of Great Evolution Paradise could not figure it out. The world is full of mysteries, and there are many things that cannot be understood just because your cultivation is powerful. Hence, the reason why the good fortune divine furnace is called the good fortune divine furnace." Yang Kai felt his breath becoming short and ragged. What he was holding in his hand was a genuine sixth-order wood element material. He turned to look to the side only to see that the crimson-red fog had gone back to a dull grey color after spitting out this sixth-order material, and his throat suddenly went dry. "Grandmaster, does the good fortune divine furnace produce materials with higher orders after consuming enough from the order below?" Grandmaster Ma Fan nodded. "Did Elder Yu and the others come here because of the good fortune divine furnace?" Grandmaster Ma Fan laughed. "Of course. What else is there in Great Evolution Paradise that is worth a trip here in person? After all, they don't expect to recruit this old man." Yang Kai swallowed nervously. "With this divine object in hand, wouldn't I be able to monopolize all the resources in the world?" "Don't get ahead of yourself." Grandmaster Ma Fan doused Yang Kai's excitement with those words. "The good fortune divine furnace might be able to produce a higher order material in exchange for ones from a lower order, but if you calculate in strict terms, the results are basically always a huge loss. Think about it. How many materials did I use just now?" 14. Yang Kai had watched carefully. Grandmaster Ma Fan had thrown 10 world element materials into the furnace at the beginning. Afterward, he added 4 more before he finally obtained a sixth-order material. In terms of value, 1 sixth-order material was equivalent to 10 fifth-order materials. Therefore, It was equivalent to losing 4 fifth orders materials. It's not that simple though. The losses you sustained this time were wood element materials, but what about yin and yang element materials? 6th order yin and yang element materials are worth more than 10 times the value of 5th order yin and yang element materials. Not to mention, 5th order yin and yang element materials are easier to obtain while those of the 6th order are extremely rare. Yin and yang element materials in the 6th order and above were extremely valuable and often could not be bought regardless of the price offered. Martial Peak, Chapter 4724, Two Methods. Grandmaster Ma Fan just smiled meaningfully and asked, "Can you guarantee that every 14 units of the same type of material will be exchanged for one of a higher order?" As I said just now, my luck today is relatively good. If your luck is bad, you might not get one in return even if you used dozens or even hundreds of materials. Luck is the most difficult element to predict out of everything. Yang Kai clenched the 6th order wood element material in his hand and quickly said, "But, if I had to choose, I would rather consume several dozen 5th order yin or yang element materials in exchange for a single 6th order counterpart." 5th order yin and yang element materials might be difficult to find, but they were much easier compared to those of the 6th order. It had to be said that 6th order yin and yang element materials were categorized as strategic reserves that could not be used easily, even among the cave heavens and paradises. Back when Voidland was being besieged by Heavenly Sword Union and Zuoquan Hui, the great emperors had required countless materials to advance into the open heaven realm. If Yang Kai had not gone to the Black Prison, robbed Luan by Feng, and mined an ore star from the Black Territory's depths, he would not have been able to get his hands on the necessary materials. The great emperors might still be stuck at the Emperor realm even now if that had been the case. Grandmaster Ma Fan nodded, "That's why they are here. The World Tree is infinitely mysterious. Even though the World Tree of the Star Boundary is just a clone, the feedback from it is so powerful that one can barely believe it. The cave heavens and paradises have taken in quite a number of disciples from the Star Boundary and even dispatched many of their own disciples to be raised there. Over the past few years, many excellent and talented individuals with extraordinary aptitude have appeared in the Star Boundary. It can even be said that there have been more geniuses emerging from the Star Boundary in the past few decades than in the entire 3,000 worlds over the past few thousand years. Not much time has passed, so these little ones have not fully grown and developed. Even so, it is enough to see that there are many among them who are eligible to advance directly into the 5th and 6th order open heaven realm. Some of them might even be able to advance directly into the 7th order. The Star Boundary was Yang Kai's homeland, so he couldn't help feeling proud after listening to Grandmaster Ma Fan's words. It was foreseeable that the Star Boundary would surely present a grand and prosperous scene in just a few hundred years. Grandmaster Ma Fan thus sighed, "We're talking about advancing directly into the 7th order open heaven realm. Since the establishment of the 36 cave heavens and 72 paradises, how many people have been able to advance directly into the 7th order? Not only does it require extraordinary aptitude but also incredible luck and fortune. In any case, one will require 7th order materials in order to advance directly into the 7th order open heaven realm. The materials for the 5 elements will not pose too much of a problem for now, as it is given that the cave heavens and paradises will have some reserves, so they will not lack them. The high-rank open heaven realm masters need these same materials for cultivation, as well. But even if they have some 7th order yin and yang element materials in their reserves, there certainly won't be enough. It is only natural that they will have to plan ahead." Yang Kai immediately understood the situation. Is that why they want to borrow the good fortune divine furnace? They want to create enough 7th order yin and yang element materials to prevent their reserves from being stretched too thin when the time comes. Grandmaster Ma Fan nodded. Yang Kai exhaled a long breath. Putting himself in their shoes, he would have made the same choice if he was someone from the cave heavens and paradises. In that case, you could have negotiated with them yourself, Grandmaster. Why are you pushing such a highly beneficial deal on me? Yang Kai was puzzled. If they wanted to borrow the good fortune divine furnace, then they would surely need to pay a price. This was a good thing for Great Evolution Paradise. They could make a lot of money just by imposing any random condition. It was a highly beneficial deal that all but fell from the sky into their lap. There was no reason to pass up something like that to somebody else. Be that as it may, Grandmaster Ma Fan had done just that. He even went so far as to proclaim himself as High Heaven Palace's high-rank guest elder. In doing so, he placed the full authority over the good fortune divine furnace in Yang Kai's hands. Grandmaster Ma Fan explained, "You may only see 4 people here today, but those 4 aren't just representing their 4 cave heavens and paradises. They are also representing all the other cave heavens and paradises. They are here to test the waters. Great Evolution Paradise has long gone into decline. At present, this old man is the only one supporting this sect. Do you think Great Evolution Paradise has the qualifications to negotiate with the cave heavens and paradises? At the most, we can ask for some resources as compensation, but Great Evolution Paradise does not lack resources. This old man only needs to offer up a few artifact refining chances to earn more than enough resources for all of us." Yang Kai frowned slightly. "Grandmaster, are you saying that they will choose to use force instead if you refuse their request?" Grandmaster Ma Fan affirmed lightly, "That's the most likely outcome." Yang Kai was secretly surprised. According to Grandmaster Ma Fan, the cave heavens and paradises were scrambling to prepare 7th-order yin and yang element materials in advance. The more they could procure, the better it would be for them. That was why they needed to use the good fortune divine furnace. Even though they had always known about the existence of the good fortune divine furnace, they had never bothered to set their sights on it, mainly because the uncertainty when using this strange innate treasure was too high. They might invest tens or even hundreds of materials only to come up empty-handed. Which sect could possibly afford such losses? In any case, each sect was bound to have some reserves of 7th-order yin and yang element materials. The numbers might be small, but they were enough. It was just that the situation was different now. The current supply could no longer meet the demand, so they had to come up with different solutions. Although they might suffer heavy losses from using the good fortune divine furnace, all their losses would be worth it if they succeeded in producing a disciple who advanced directly to the 7th-order open heaven realm. After all, if one were to advance directly into the 7th-order open heaven realm, then their future limit would be the 9th order. Leaving aside the 7th-order materials for now, even the supply of 6th-order yin and yang element materials was insufficient for the near future. The cave heavens and paradises would surely have a much greater demand for such materials in short order. At present, Voidland is the only sect in the entire 3,000 worlds that has the qualifications to negotiate with all the cave heavens and paradises. Grandmaster Ma Fan turned to look at Yang Kai. The world tree was the best example. The star boundary was Yang Kai's homeland, and the world tree was growing in the star boundary. Regardless of his cultivation, he had more than enough right to speak on the matter. His status as a great emperor of the star boundary was enough for him to speak on equal terms with the cave heavens and paradises, at least in this situation. Yang Kai's eyes flashed. "What are your conditions, Grandmaster?" Grandmaster Ma Fan laughed. "It's easy to talk to smart people. Great Evolution Paradise was in a steady decline, so how could they negotiate with the cave heavens and paradises on equal footing? Under such circumstances, there was nothing they could do to stop the cave heavens and paradises from simply taking control of the good fortune divine furnace. As a last resort, Grandmaster Ma Fan could only dump the risks on Yang Kai instead. Nevertheless, his actions would result in Yang Kai taking quite a large share of the profits from Great Evolution Paradise. It was only natural that he would refuse to take part in such a loss-making business. Regardless of the conditions you eventually agree upon with the cave heavens and paradises, Great Evolution Paradise will receive half of the proceed. Grandmaster Ma Fan declared bluntly. Even if it was only half the amount, it would still be far more than the amount Great Evolution Paradise would receive if they tried to negotiate on their own. Yang Kai nodded without hesitation. Fine. This deal was the equivalent of pie falling into his outstretched hand for nothing. There was no reason for him to be dissatisfied with receiving half of the benefits when he didn't need to do anything to obtain them in the first place. Also, Great Evolution Paradise's Tao Temple in the star boundary will need to be doubled in size. This old man wishes to send more disciples to cultivate at the star boundary. That's not a problem either. That's enough, Grandmaster Ma Fan nodded. Is that all? Yang Kai was extremely astonished. What else should I ask for? Grandmaster Ma Fan looked at Yang Kai flatly. Yang Kai burst into laughter. You're truly an unselfish man, Grandmaster. Grandmaster Ma Fan snorted. It won't seem sincere if I tried to take the lion's share. Well, in any case, this old man is planning to come out of retirement. Come out of retirement? Yang Kai was curious. The little ones will surely experience rapid growth after being sent to the star boundary. They will need many resources for their cultivation once they advance into the open heaven realm in the future. Great Evolution Paradise is not wealthy, so this old man will need to find a way to make more money. Seeing as this old man has no other skills, I can only perform artifact refining for others. Yang Kai's eyes lit up when he heard those words. Are you planning to help others perform artifact refining to earn resources, Grandmaster? Do you have an idea? Yes, I do. I have a great idea. Yang Kai nodded repeatedly. If you don't mind, Grandmaster, I can hire you as Voidland's chief artifact refiner. For every artifact that you refine, I will pay you a certain amount according to the value of the artifact. What do you think? Grandmaster Ma Fan fell silent. It was obvious that he did not wish to be restrained in such a manner. Yang Kai continued, in addition, I can also send some disciples over to help you, Grandmaster. Whenever you are in a good mood, you can teach them something. If you are in a terrible mood, you can feel free to beat and scold them. Of course, the disciples will remain respectful and filial to you. Grandmaster Ma Fan glanced sideways at Yang Kai with an expression that seemed to say, Brat, you are untrustworthy after all. Yang Kai struck while the iron was hot. Grandmaster, you've already proclaimed to be High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder in front of Elder Yu and the others. Would it make a difference if you receive an additional title as Voidland's chief artifact refiner? After hesitating for a long while, Grandmaster Ma Fan finally let out a long sigh. I never imagined that this old man would have such a day. He had no choice but to rip his heart out for the sake of his disciples. In that case, do we have a deal, Grandmaster? Yang Kai was ecstatic. Grandmaster Ma Fan nodded sullenly. Yang Kai burst into hearty laughter. Don't worry, Grandmaster. The disciples I send to work under you will not add to your worries. Grandmaster Ma Fan snorted. They won't be able to learn anything from me without the necessary talent and skill. Yang Kai turned to look back at the good fortune divine furnace again, his gaze burning hot. Grandmaster Ma Fan added, what I showed you just now was the situation after putting in various materials of the same element. As long as the amount is sufficient, the good fortune divine furnace will return a material of a higher order. However, there's another method as well. Yang Kai asked, what method? Grandmaster Ma Fan said, take out a set of materials of the same order and throw them in. You will know after you give it a try. Upon hearing those words, Yang Kai took out a complete set of fifth-order materials harvested from the gourd vine from his space ring. If there was any resource that Voidland did not lack, it was undoubtedly fifth-order materials. Ever since obtaining the gourd vine, Voidland could harvest a complete set of fifth-order yin, yang and 5 elements materials every month from it. Yang Kai brought a lot of materials along with him when he first departed the star boundary. Now that several dozen years had passed, he was certain that Voidland had accumulated even more such materials by now. After throwing the complete set of 7 into the good fortune divine furnace, the grey fog wriggled like a living creature and greedily swallowed them up in the blink of an eye. A short while later, the grey fog suddenly turned crimson-red and an object was spat out from the depths of the furnace. Yang Kai caught the object, took a look, and exclaimed with raised eyebrows, a sixth-order water element. Grandmaster Ma Fan explained, compared to only investing materials of the same element, the chances of the good fortune divine furnace giving back a material of a higher order increases up to 70 or 80% if you invest a complete set of materials in one go. It can almost be said that the chances of failure are minimal. However, this method has a drawback in that it is impossible to determine the element of the material you will receive back from the good fortune divine furnace. You received a water element material this time, but it might be a fire element or yin element instead next time. Yang Kai sighed. It really is amazing. There were two methods, both with their respective pros and cons. The first method might result in great losses, but one would receive a material of the same element as the element originally invested. On the other hand, although one would experience much less losses with the second method, there were a multitude of uncertainties that came with the results. Yang Kai had the sudden urge to take all the materials that Voidland had been accumulating from the gourd vine over the years and throw them into the good fortune divine furnace right now. No matter how uncertain the results, he would eventually obtain some sixth-order yin and yang element materials if he threw in hundreds or thousands of sets, right? Martial Peak, Chapter 4725, Demanding the Lion's Share. When they returned to the Grand Hall, Hong Xiongling and the others immediately turned to look in their direction. Lu Zhenyang of Azure Nether Paradise said, "Sect Master Yang, we have been delayed here for quite a few days now. The Grandmaster refused to come out of retreat earlier, so there was nobody we could discuss with. Seeing as you have the right to call the shots regarding this matter, you need to give us a proper answer." Duan Rui Shan of Clear Mind Cave Heaven nodded in agreement. "That's right, Sect Master Yang. Please feel free to name any condition you might have. We are here on behalf of the Cave Heavens and Paradises. Naturally, we will not let Great Evolution Paradise suffer any losses from this transaction." Yang Kai turned to look at Grandmaster Ma Fan, who had an aloof expression on his face, as though this matter had nothing to do with him. It was clear that he was unwilling to intervene at all. Just as Grandmaster Ma Fan had mentioned earlier, Great Evolution Paradise simply could not refuse the Cave Heavens and Paradises borrowing the Good Fortune Divine Furnace under the current circumstances. In this vast universe, Voidland was the only force that could negotiate with the Cave Heavens and Paradises on equal footing. The declining Great Evolution Paradise did not have this qualification. Grandmaster Ma Fan's previous act of hiding and refusing to meet anybody was nothing more than a tactic to buy time. It just so happened that Yang Kai was returning from the Shattered Heaven, so he quickly passed this troublesome matter over for Yang Kai to handle. Still, even if it was only for personal benefit, Yang Kai would not sell the rights to the Good Fortune Divine Furnace cheaply. Facing everybody's gazes, Yang Kai smiled lightly. "It has only been a few decades since you sent your disciples to the star boundary. No matter how extraordinary their aptitude, I'm sure their cultivation is not that high, right? There is still a long time before they advance to the open heaven realm, so why are you in such a rush?" Duan Rui Shan shook his head. "How can we not be anxious? Just as you said, the cultivation of the disciples we sent to the star boundary over the past few decades might not be too high, but their growth speed is too greater. I'm afraid it won't take more than 100 or 200 years before some of them begin to advance into the open heaven realm." Yang Kai was stunned. That fast? For some to advance into the open heaven realm within another 100 or 200 years, the speed was simply too shocking to believe. Hong Xiongling stated, "The disciples we sent to the star boundary were carefully selected in the first place, so their aptitudes and talents were already among the best. Moreover, they are cultivating in a place as wondrous as the star boundary, so how can they not improve quickly? To be honest, despite how long old men like us have lived, we have never seen such a prosperous sight before. The cultivation of those little ones advances practically every single day." Yang Kai couldn't help feeling slightly worried. If their cultivation improves too quickly, will they not suffer from an unstable foundation? Yu Chang Dao shook his head. "We were also worried about this at the beginning. However, we discovered that there are no such issues after performing a thorough examination of the condition of our disciples. The feedback they received from the World Tree and the highly abundant Heavenly Way and Martial Dao Aura in the star boundary are enough to satisfy their advancement requirements. That is why they do not show any signs of an unstable foundation whatsoever, even though their cultivation is progressing rapidly. Take my disciple, Shi Die Zhuang, for example. Sect Master, do you know what his current cultivation is?" Shi Die Zhuang was the child whom Yu Chang Dao tried so hard to recruit as his legacy disciple because of the baby's innate Dao body, which was extremely compatible with his inheritance. It was also because of Shi Die Zhuang that Yu Chang Dao became High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder. That was why Yang Kai had a deep impression of this disciple. At the time of Yang Kai's departure, Shi Zhuang was a newborn baby, and about 30 years had passed since then. With his aptitude, it was obvious that his cultivation would not be too low. Yu Changdao had no real intention to let Yang Kai guess, so he answered his own question: that child is already in the origin returning realm. In the near future, he will advance into the origin king realm, then the Dao source realm, and then emperor realm. After that, he only needs to condense his Dao seal before he is ready to advance into the open heaven realm. Advancing from a baby with no foundation to the origin returning realm in the short span of a couple of decades was no longer something that could be achieved with talent alone. One would also need the guidance of a great teacher and an extremely conducive cultivation environment. Fortunately, Shi Zhuang had both. Yang Kai gasped softly. He himself had 2 disciples. Leaving aside Zhao Yi Bai, who had mediocre aptitude, Zhao Ya was definitely the cultivator with the most heaven-defying aptitude he had ever met. Nevertheless, even with her aptitude, and even if he did not suppress her cultivation for so many years, she might not be able to advance to the origin returning realm within such a short time. The reason for the difference in their cultivation was that one was cultivating in a holy land like the star boundary while the other was in his small universe. Yu Changdao continued, in another 100 or 200 years, the disciples of each sect will surely reveal a splendid scene of 100 flowers blooming. At that time, there will be as many people advancing into the 5th order open heaven realm and the 6th order open heaven realm as carp swimming upriver. There will most likely be people advancing into the 7th order open heaven realm too. Can you imagine how great the demand for materials would be among the cave heavens and paradises? Forget the 5th order materials, each sect has an adequate stock of them, so there will be enough to go around. However, there won't be enough 6th order or 7th order materials at all. In the past, those who could advance directly into the 6th order open heaven realm generally held the status of a core disciple in the cave heavens and paradises. Most of the time, only one person would be born to each sect every few hundred to 1,000 years. Chu Hua Shong of Yin-Yang Cave Heaven and Ning Dao Ran of Free and Unfettered Paradise were such disciples. It was precisely because core disciples were so rare and precious that Zhuo Quan Hui tried to take revenge on Yang Kai for killing Zhao Xing during Yin-Yang Cave Heaven's Dao Theory Assembly. Now though, thanks to the star boundary's existence, there were bound to be more and more core disciples in the future. Hong Xiongling followed up, it is precisely because of this reason that we need to plan ahead, otherwise, it will be too late if we wait until the time comes when we need these materials. Yang Kai nodded lightly. It has been a long time since I left the star boundary, so I don't know much about the situation there. His fingers tapped lightly against the table as he pondered in silence for a while. Then, he raised a finger, the right to use the good fortune divine furnace for 1 month in exchange for the opportunity to enter the small source worlds of each sect once for life experience. Grandmaster Ma Fan had been standing nearby, silently drinking wine from his bottle all this while, seemingly aloof and unaware of what was being discussed. However, as soon as Yang Kai spoke those words, he choked and spat out a mist of wine. This brat, sure is bold. Ma Fan suddenly felt that leaving the matter involving the good fortune divine furnace to Yang Kai had been a wise choice indeed. That was because he would never have such thoughts if he were the one to do the negotiations. At most, he would have asked for resources from each sect as compensation. Thinking about it carefully though, this was like any business transaction where one should always try to take the lion's share so that the other party had some space and leeway to bargain and negotiate. Duan Rui Shan's brow twitched visibly at those words. Sect Master Yang, can you change your conditions? For example, each sect pays a certain amount of resources in exchange for the right of use it for a certain amount of time. Lu Zhenyang nodded in agreement. That's right, Sect Master Yang. The small source worlds are extremely important to the cave heavens and paradises. Our own disciples have to wait in line to enter the small source worlds for training. Most of the time, many of them don't even get a chance to enter despite waiting for hundreds or even thousands of years. We simply cannot afford to portion out an opportunity for you. Although Yu Changdao and Hong Xiongling remained silent, it was clear that they were of the same mind. Yang Kai just smiled and negotiated. You don't need to feel so distressed. Thanks to Yin-Yang Cave Heaven, I had the opportunity to enter a small source world for training once. It was a bountiful trip, and I've not forgotten the feeling. I've been thinking that it would be great if I had another opportunity to enter another small source world. As for this request, well, it's bound to be a little tight, but I'm sure it's not too difficult for you all. Lu Zhenyang looked like he was about to speak, but Yang Kai raised a hand and interjected, "Of course, I am simply making this suggestion. As for how things will actually be implemented, I'm sure you will need to discuss with the others first. After all, this matter involves all the cave heavens and paradises. This decision is not something the four of you can make on your own." The words Lu Zhenyang wanted to speak got stuck in his throat, which was a terrible feeling. Yang Kai thus swiftly got to his feet. "I've been away from home for too long. I need to return to Voidland, so I won't stay here any longer." While speaking, he turned to look at Grandmaster Ma Fan. "Grandmaster, I'll be taking my leave first. I will send some people over. At that time, I will be counting on you, Grandmaster." Grandmaster Ma Fan nodded lightly. It was something they had agreed to earlier, so he would not regret his decision. Yang Kai glanced at Hong Hu and the two of them walked out. "Shall we head back to the star boundary?" Hong Xiongling looked at the others. Now that Yang Kai, the only person they could negotiate with, was gone, it was meaningless for them to remain here any longer. Yang Kai had already named his conditions. Whether or not they could accept the conditions or how they were going to fulfill the conditions would require further discussion among the representatives of the other cave heavens and paradises. "Let's go." Likewise, Du and Rui Shan nodded and stood up. The rest quickly bid their goodbyes to Grandmaster Ma Fan and followed closely behind Yang Kai and Hong Hu's departure. Yu Chang Dao caught up to Yang Kai. Standing next to him, he spoke in a low voice, "Sect Master, in my opinion, Da Zhuang has a solid foundation. Moreover, his roots and his aptitude are absolute. There is a high possibility that he can advance directly into the seventh order open heaven realm when he condenses his Dao seal in the future." Yang Kai raised his brow at those words. "That's good news." Yu Chang Dao smiled flatteringly, "About the materials that he will need when he advances into the open heaven realm." Yang Kai turned to look at Yu Chang Dao and asked with a chuckle, "Elder Yu, are you asking me this question in your capacity as High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder or Free and Unfettered Paradise's foreign affairs envoy?" Yu Chang Dao answered with a straight face, "When it comes down to it, Da Zhuang is a High Heaven Palace disciple. Of course, this old master is discussing this matter with you in my capacity as High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Da Zhuang is a High Heaven Palace disciple. Naturally, High Heaven Palace will take full responsibility to provide all the materials he will need to advance into the open heaven realm. Yu Chang Dao immediately broke into a bright smile. Da Zhuang is really fortunate to have joined High Heaven Palace. Yang Kai said gratefully, "It's all thanks to your dedicated teaching over the years, Elder Yu." Hong Xiongling and the others watched as the one old fox and one young fox chatted away happily. They couldn't help feeling a little frustrated by the sight. When Yu Chang Dao did not hesitate to become High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder in order to take Da Zhuang as his disciple back then, many of his friends laughed at and ridiculed him. However, based on the current situation, his decision had been a wise one indeed. Thanks to his identity as High Heaven Palace's supreme high-rank guest elder, he succeeded at forming a good relationship with Yang Kai, and as a result, it was much easier to get some benefits from and reach agreements with Yang Kai. Even if Da Zhuang were to grow and develop under High Heaven Palace's banner, he would still be Yu Chang Dao's legacy disciple. That was something that would never change, regardless of the circumstances. During the journey, Hong Xiongling and the others constantly tried to find opportunities to discuss the rights to use the Good Fortune Divine Furnace with Yang Kai, but the latter stubbornly refused to budge on his stance. Thus, the others could only sigh helplessly. From Yang Kai's viewpoint, he had already named his conditions. As for the rest, the cave heavens and paradises would need to come to a consensus. Only then could the negotiation proceed any further. There was no need to waste their energy discussing this matter until then. Besides, he actually proposed similar conditions in the past. When news about the World Tree first leaked out to the public, the news attracted many cave heavens and paradises to investigate the situation. He had wanted to request opportunities to enter the small source worlds of these top great forces in exchange for the right to accept disciples from the star boundary and establish a Tao temple in the star boundary. However, the proposal was rejected by Shu Linggong. The reason was that the qualifications to enter the small source worlds were tough competition even among the disciples of each cave heaven and paradise. They didn't even have enough to go around for themselves, so how could they let somebody take advantage of them in that manner? Marshall Peak, Chapter 4726, Who is this auntie? Even Shu Linggong had spoken back then, so Yang Kai could only settle for the second best option and change his conditions. However, the situation was different now. The cave heavens and paradises had witnessed the mysterious effects of the star boundaries world tree with their own eyes over the past few decades. The rapid growth of their disciples was the best proof. What immediately followed was a large demand for higher-order materials. If they wanted their disciples to successfully directly advance into the sixth-order open heaven realm, they had no choice but to compromise. Compared to opportunities to train in the small source worlds of each sect, the advancement of their disciples was naturally their top priority. That was why Yang Kai was confident that he could reach a consensus with the cave heavens and paradises to some extent. The routes to the star boundary and voidland were different. Yang Kai, Hong Hu, Yu Chang Dao, and the others traveled together for a month or two before they went their separate ways. Yu Chang Dao and the others headed straight to the star boundary. Meanwhile, Yang Kai set off for voidland with Hong Hu. It took another 2 months before the two of them finally arrived at void territory after a long journey. Looking from a distance in the void, the enormous Void Land and Star City stood next to each other. Void Star City had been restored to its previous prosperity and there was a steady stream of flight-type artifacts in all shapes and sizes coming in and out of the Void Dock. It appeared to be very lively. In reality, Hong Hu had sensed the vitality of Void territory as soon as they entered. Despite passing through many other great territories, there had not been any other one that was as lively as Void territory. Moreover, flight-type artifacts were a rare sight in the vast void. It wasn't until she saw the prosperity of Void Star City that she understood why this place attracted so many cultivators. Is this Voidland? Hong Hu stared in amazement. Yang Kai nodded, that's right. This is Voidland. Staring at Voidland that was covered by the 9 heavenly layers grand array, Hong Hu seemed to detect something. I can sense the aura of the Dragon Clan. It's not very pure, but it's very strong. Yang Kai laughed and commented, I forgot to tell you, senior. Voidland sits on the back of Bai Shi. Old man Bai Shi had been sleeping for tens of thousands of years, and the spirit province on his back gradually evolved into Voidland's predecessor. Bai Shi. Hong Hu raised her delicate brow. As part of the Phoenix clan, it was only natural that she knew about Bai Shi's existence. Although she knew about him, she had never met him before, so she sighed in amazement. I've always heard the saying Bai Shi bears a heavy load. Legend even had it that his back can carry the entire universe. Now that I see him today, he really lives up to his reputation. When they got closer, Yang Kai took out a jade, opened the 9 heavenly layers grand array, and slipped inside with Hong Hu. Old man Bai Shi's embodiment was sitting down cross-legged on one of the platforms located on a certain spirit peak. His long eyebrows drooped down to his knees and a mysterious language flowed out of his lips, imparting precious wisdom with every word. Many divine spirits sat upright in front of him and listened attentively. These divine spirits included the Dragon Clan members who grew up on Dragon Island, Xiao Xiao who had taken in Tai Yu's source, Liu Yang who had the Phoenix True Fire, Luan Feng, Fan Wu, and the Stone Spirit Clan from the Star Boundaries East Territory, Cheong Chi who was Flowing Time Great Emperor's Mount, and several others with a wide variety of races. The divine spirits in the star boundary might all carry different sources and inheritances of their own, but they did not know how to cultivate or improve their respective bloodlines past a certain point. Needless to say, it was difficult for them to explore their own inheritance without any guidance. Old man Bai Shi might only be a dragonkin, but he was old and wise, with an immense amount of knowledge and experience. Oftentimes, some divine spirits would gain valuable insight just by listening to a casual remark from him. The Dragon clan had made great progress under his earnest teachings over the years. Among them, Zhu Qing's true form had grown to over 5,000 meters in length. While she was far from the standard of a grand dragon, she was now comparable to a fifth-order open heaven realm in strength. Likewise, the rest of the divine spirits also experienced growth to a certain extent, though none as pronounced as Zhu Qing's. It was for this reason that all the divine spirits liked to gather around Old Man Bai Shi to listen to his teachings. All of a sudden, Old Man Bai Shi raised his head and looked up into the sky in shock. Slowly getting to his feet, he announced in a loud voice, "An honored guest has graced us. Welcome." The others looked up upon hearing those words only to see two streams of light descending from the sky and landing in front of them. One of them was Yang Kai, who had not shown up for several decades. The other was a woman dressed in snow-white robes whom nobody had seen before. Zhu Qing's beautiful eyes lit up, and she gazed at Yang Kai lovingly. Unfortunately, there were too many people here, so no matter how much she missed him, it was inappropriate for her to act overly intimate in public. On the other hand, Xiao Xiao and Liu Yang did not have such reservations. The two of them had accompanied Yang Kai from the time he was young and weak. It could even be said that they were his longest companions. Xiao Xiao scrambled over and stood in front of Yang Kai. Using both hands, he climbed along Yang Kai's clothes until he reached his shoulders and sat down with a happy expression. Meanwhile, Liu Yang ran over in small steps and came to stand in front of Yang Kai. Stretching her arms wide, she looked up and called out in a babyish voice, "Master, up." Yang Kai raised his hand and rapped his knuckles on her head. "Speak normally." Thanks to some lucky opportunities, Liu Yang had obtained a true body even though she was originally an artifact spirit. It was just that she had always maintained a childlike appearance. At this moment, she was acting adorable and childish on purpose. After being hit on the head, her eyes immediately became misty and she stubbornly held out her arms and said, "Hold me." Yang Kai sighed and bent down to pick her up. She immediately wrapped her arms around his neck in satisfaction and tilted her small head to rest against his neck. Even the corners of her eyes crinkled with pleasure. On the contrary, Zhu Qing's smiling gaze immediately flooded with wanton murderous intent. Xiao Hong and Xiao He, whom Yang Kai had brought out from the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary, had grown considerably stronger thanks to the long-term consumption of the dragon blood pills. Moreover, they had been taught to assume human form by Old Man Bai Shi. When they saw this scene, the pair, who also looked like small children, rushed over. Standing side by side in front of Yang Kai, they stretched out their arms. "Carry us too." When Xiao He spoke, his saliva dribbled to the ground, which then began to sizzle and melt away, like it was being corroded by acid. It was a terrifying sight. Liu Yang flushed slightly and looked down at the other two with a scornful look. Then, she abruptly turned around to look at Hong Hu and whispered a question in Yang Kai's ear. "Master, who is this auntie?" "Auntie?" Hong Hu choked. She had been studying Liu Yang with great interest. Both of them were part of the Phoenix clan, so she immediately detected the Phoenix true fire inside Liu Yang's body. That source strength was a little different from Luan Feng, who only had a weak Phoenix clan bloodline. It was undoubtedly an extremely pure Phoenix clan source. The corners of Hong Hu's face twitched involuntarily when she suddenly heard Liu Yang's remark. Still, she gave a fake smile and said, "What an adorable child. She is so cute and lovable." While she was speaking, she reached out a hand and grabbed Liu Yang's cheek, giving it a rough knead and twist as she asked through gritted teeth, "Is this the person who inherited the Phoenix Empress source?" Caught between these two, Yang Kai was drenched in a cold sweat as he quickly shook his head and said, "It's not her, but one of my wives. She isn't here, so she is probably in retreat." Hong Hu nodded lightly, "That's good." Giving Liu Yang a sweet smile, she released her grip and patted Liu Yang on the head. "This auntie is called Hong Hu. We are of the same clan. This auntie will make sure to take good care of you in the future." Liu Yang turned her head away, showing the back of her head to Hong Hu. Her posture screamed, "Who the hell do you think you are, old hag?" Moreover, a bright red mark marred her fair little face. "So, it is junior sister Hong Hu. Please forgive my discourtesy." Seeing that the atmosphere was turning chilly, Old Man Bai Shi immediately stepped forward to intervene. Hong Hu bowed elegantly, Greetings, senior brother Bai Shi. Junior sister, are you from the ancestral land? Old man Bai Shi asked. Yang Kai looked at old man Bai Shi in surprise. Senior, do you know about the ancestral land? Old man Bai Shi chuckled. After living for so long, it's only natural to know a thing or two. Long ago, I visited the ancestral land. What's more, I stayed there for some time before I returned. Hong Hu was curious. Why do I have no recollection of this? Bai Shi simply replied lightly, it was many years ago. She fell silent for a while, then she nodded, it looks like it has been quite a while indeed. Seeing as Bai Shi claimed to have visited the ancestral land in the past, then he must have gone there before. Nevertheless, she had no recollection of this. In other words, she had yet to even be born during his visit. That was something that could be traced back to several tens of thousands of years ago. How is the situation in the ancestral land? Is it the same as usual? Bai Shi queried. Hong Hu smiled lightly. The ancestral land has undergone great changes. It's not possible to explain everything in a short time. I will tell you the details when we have the opportunity. Good. He nodded. Yang Kai put Liu Yang down and spoke up from the side. I don't know what it was like when you visited the ancestral land, senior, but the current ancestral land is not what it used to be. The reason Senior Hong Hu returned with me is to bring all the divine spirits in Voidland back to the ancestral land. After all, they will grow much faster there. They might even receive the opportunity to obtain the inheritance within their source strength. When old man Bai Shi heard those words, he said worriedly, the Kuan clan is in the ancestral land. If the little dragons from Voidland head there. Yang Kai smiled, don't worry. The Phoenix clan will take care of them. Not to mention, I've already talked to the Kuan clan and come to an agreement with them. Old man Bai Shi nodded, that's for the best. I've thought of telling you about the ancestral land all these years, but I was worried about the Kuan clan. That's why I never mentioned it. Seeing as you've already made the necessary arrangements though, it's definitely a good thing to send them there. Many thanks for your concern, senior. Yang Kai nodded. In truth, he had wondered about this issue. Logically speaking, an existence like Bai Shi was bound to know about the ancestral land. Even so, not a word about it had been spoken in all these years. Only now did the truth come to light. It was not that Bai Shi never bothered to tell Yang Kai, but that he was simply worried about the existence of the Kuan clan. The Dragon clan members in Voidland were far too weak. Rashly sending them to the ancestral land was equivalent to sending a lamb into the tiger's den. Rather than sending them to their deaths, it was better to remain silent for now. Now that Yang Kai had made certain arrangements and a Phoenix clan master like Hong who would be protecting them, there was nothing to worry about anymore. During their conversation, a stream of light suddenly sped in this direction. The light approached them in the blink of an eye, only to reveal a stunning figure. Heavenly Moon Demon Spider, Zhu Yin. She spent most of her time in retreat and rarely showed herself. Even Yang Kai had a difficult time trying to meet her. Only Shanqing Luo could meet Zhu Yin frequently. The reason for her arrival at this moment was clearly that she had noticed Hong Hu's divine spirit aura and came to check out the situation out of curiosity. After not seeing her for so many years, Yang Kai could clearly sense that this woman's aura had gotten deeper and more profound. She was a mature divine spirit, but had grown up in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary all her life until Yang Kai brought her out. As a result, she was unable to adapt to the world principles of the outside world immediately, which was why she could not exert her full strength all this while. Even so, the strength she displayed back then was enough to easily suppress a 7th-order Open Heaven Realm Master. At present, she was probably a match for any 8th-order Open Heaven Realm Master in strength. Phoenix clan? Zhu Yin exclaimed in surprise after a thorough examination of Hong Hu. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4727, I am not their opponent. There was more than one person with a Phoenix clan source in Voidland, therefore, Zhu Yin was not unfamiliar with the aura of the Phoenix clan. That was how she figured out Hong Hu's origins at a glance. What surprised her was that the aura of this Phoenix clan member in front of her was extremely powerful. This Phoenix was definitely not weak. Hong Hu nodded as she was also examining Zhu Juyin curiously. There were no heavenly moon demon spiders in the ancestral land, so it was her first time seeing this kind of divine spirit. For a time, she couldn't identify her. Yang Kai stepped forward and introduced them to each other. Only then could they consider themselves acquainted. The ancestral land. Zhu Juyin revealed a suspicious look. What is that place? Hong Hu smiled. It is the origin of all divine spirits. To be honest, junior sister Zhu, with how strong your bloodline is, you should have been able to sense the existence of the ancestral land. That is the instinct that can be found deep within the bloodline of every divine spirit after they reach maturity, regardless of their origins or clan. A look of realization came over Zhu Juyin's face. So it's that place. Just as Hong Hu mentioned, she had developed a vague sense that she was being summoned somewhere over the years. It was just that the sense was very weak and indistinct. Ever since leaving the grand ancient ruins boundary, she had been trying to adapt to the world principles of the outside world. Not to mention, she had yet to recover her strength completely. There was no saying whether there would be any dangers waiting for her either. That was why she did not bother to explore and investigate this feeling. Nevertheless, she originally planned to make a trip once she recovered her full strength. It was a surprise to learn the truth about that place from Hong Hu. The ancestral land is where all divine spirits originate from. It is a place filled with rich ancestral strength, which is highly beneficial to the cultivation of divine spirits. The reason Senior Hong Hu came along with me this time is to bring everyone with a divine spirit bloodline to the ancestral land. As for the specific situation in the ancestral land, Senior Hong Hu will explain to everybody in detail, Yang Kai said while looking at everybody. Many of the divine spirits looked fascinated. Over the years, the strength of the human cultivators who came from the star boundary had increased steadily. Leaving aside the fact that the great emperors and Yang Kai's wives had already advanced into the sixth order open heaven realm a long time ago, even most of the pseudo-great emperors from back then had advanced to the open heaven realm. On the other hand, the divine spirits who used to dominate the star boundary barely took a step forward. They felt very lost when it came to their futures as a result. Although listening to the teachings of Old Man Bai Shi over the past few years had helped them to a certain extent, the improvement of their bloodline was simply too slow. It was not until today that they learned about a place where all the divine spirits originated. Moreover, the ancestral land was filled with the mysterious ancestral strength that was highly beneficial to the cultivation of the divine spirits. How could the divine spirits not be fascinated by such a mysterious place? For a time, they couldn't help looking excited. On behalf of all present, I offer thanks, Senior. Yang Kai cupped his fist at Hong Hu. Hong Hu nodded. Bring the one who inherited the Phoenix Empress source to me. Once you have arranged everything, I will bring them back to the ancestral land. Good. Yang Kai nodded. Hong Hu would naturally receive hospitality from Old Man Bai Shi and Zhu Juyin, so there was no need for Yang Kai to worry about her. Yang Kai asked Zhu Qing for details and learned that Su Yang was currently cultivating in retreat, thus, he left with a flash. As soon as Yang Kai departed, a large group of divine spirits crowded around Hong Hu as though they had found a rare treasure. They eagerly asked about the situation in the ancestral land. Hong Hu felt as though she was drowning in infinite enthusiasm, so she couldn't help smiling bitterly for a while. She never imagined that so many divine spirits had gathered in Void Land. Not to mention, they consisted of so many different clans. Even though she was surrounded by so many divine spirits, she patiently answered their questions one at a time. In their conversations with each other, the situation in the ancestral land gradually became clear to all. Just as Yang Kai was rushing towards Su Yang's cultivation location, a transparent and almost imperceptible silk thread came flying through the air and wrapped around his body at the speed of lightning. Yang Kai lowered his head to look, seeing a silk thread move like a living thing and swiftly wrap around him several hundred times, swaddling him so tightly that he resembled a dumpling. Immediately after that, a tugging force came from the silk thread. Bundled up like a ball and unable to move a muscle, he was involuntarily dragged through the air at breakneck speed. His figure turned into a stream of light. On one of the spirit peaks below, the graceful figure of second manager Bian Yu Qing stood on the branch of the tree. She looked up into the sky with a suspicious look in her beautiful eyes. Why does that look like the sect master? When she looked again, there was nobody in sight anymore. In her confusion, she sent a message to the governor of Void Star City, Mo Mai. Did sect master return? Mo Mai replied a short while later, I don't know. Bian Yu Qing frowned and murmured to herself, I can't believe I'm seeing things. Am I getting old? Inside a certain hall, Yang Kai was thrown to the cold ground like a wet rag. A plump body straddled him from above and a slender hand caressed his cheek. A slim finger pulled his chin upward. Smelly man, are you finally willing to come back? Yang Kai could not move a single muscle. Looking around for a bit though, he winked at Shanqing Luo. Senior Zhu Juyin is with old man Bai Shi. She won't be back for the time being. Shall we enjoy a quick one? Or would you prefer going for 100 rounds? Shanqing Luo blushed slightly and spat softly. Why are you thinking of such naughty things as soon as you return? Who will listen to you? His tongue was so sweet that it was as though his mouth was filled with honey. Luoa, it has been so long. I missed you so much. Her body immediately softened at those words. Her face turned redder, but her large and watery eyes still glared at him. Missed me? If you missed me, then why didn't you come to me? If I had not dragged you here just now, you'd probably be making love to Big Sister by now. I knew it. Out of all the sisters, Big Sister has the largest place in your heart. Yang Kai replied seriously, every one of you is equally important to me. Nobody comes first or last. Liar. She pouted. Getting nowhere with this conversation, Yang Kai flexed slightly and the silk threads that bound him snapped apart. Grabbing Shanqing Luo's elegant waist, he flipped over and pressed her beneath his body. He looked at her affectionately. Words can be deceiving, but the body does not lie. Why don't you feel it with your body? Shanqing Luo turned her head away and closed her eyes, her lashes fluttering slightly. After the dust settled, Shanqing Luo lazily rested on top of Yang Kai's body and muttered, the ancestral land? Yang Kai nodded. Senior Hong who came here to bring all the divine spirits in Voidland back to the ancestral land. Senior Zhu Juyin seems to be quite interested in the idea as well. If things go as planned, she will bring you with her. I'm not worried since she will be taking care of you, but do be careful of the Kuan clan when you arrive there. Shanqing Luo nodded, I will. Yang Kai reached out and slapped her full, smooth as silk moon before saying, I need to find Su Yang. Senior Hong who is waiting for her. The enchantress lying above him simply winked at him mischievously though and remarked, no need. I've already sent a message to all my sisters and asked them to come over. While saying so, she gave a wave of her hand and released a barrier. Several familiar auras immediately entered Yang Kai's perception. Under his dumbfounded gaze, Yu Meng walked in the lead, followed closely by Su Yang, Xia Ningchang, Shui Yu, and Ji Yao. Yu Meng stood with her back upright and her chest puffed out, staring down at the couple on the bed with a look of disdain. Su Yang stood there with her head slightly lowered. On the other hand, Xia Ningchang, Shui Yu, and Ji Yao were blushing furiously. Their skin was flushed and they seemed to be at a loss for what to do. Everyone's here. Yang Kai gave a dry laugh. Yu Meng glared at Yang Kai before she turned to look at Shanqing Luo. Was the meal you had alone tasty? Shanqing Luo rested on Yang Kai's chest with a silly look in her beautiful eyes. Tasty or not, you'll know once you try it for yourself, big sister Yu Meng. Even though Yu Meng was a charm demon, she had to reluctantly admit that she was not as good as Shanqing Luo when it came to such shamelessness. Thus, she sighed to herself. This devilish woman is bold indeed. No wonder this smelly man is so obsessed with her and visited her as soon as he returned. Xia Ningchang's head was hanging so low that she practically touched her chest as she murmured, Luoa said you were back, so I came to have a look. I am going now. While speaking, she covered her face with her hands and turned to flee. Shanqing Luo, however, lifted a hand, and a snow-white spider thread wrapped around Xia Ningchang's waist. Ignoring Xia Ningchang's startled cry, she dragged the veiled beauty back to the bed and giggled happily. You're already here, so why are you leaving? No one can leave without taking good care of husband. Yu Meng turned to glance at Shui Yu and Ji Yao. Those two were absolutely terrified and their eyes were filled with horror. She sneered coldly and strode towards the bed, stripping off her clothes while walking. You acted like pitiful widows when he was gone, always sighing and looking gloomy all day long. Why are you hesitating now that he is back? I don't care. If I don't drain this smelly man dry today, I won't call myself Yu Meng again. She went up and kicked Shan Qing Luo aside. Looking at the situation on the bed, Su Yang suddenly stepped forward. Ji Yarrow and Shui Yu hugged each other, trembling uncontrollably as they called out in a shaking voice, "Big sister, you." Su Yang turned a deaf ear to them. Her gaze was firm, as though 1,000 men would not stop her. Sect Master really came back. Bian Yu Qing was dealing with some minor tasks in Voidland when she suddenly received the message. Following a check with her divine sense, she became filled with joy. She quickly set aside what she was doing and hurried towards the main conference hall. When she arrived in front of the grand hall, she saw a figure with one hand supporting his waist and one hand pressed against the wall for support. The figure was hobbling along, seeming as though each step required great effort. The figure was extremely familiar, and upon taking a closer look, she was shocked. Sect Master. Bian Yu Qing hurried over and took Yang Kai's arm. His complexion was as pale as paper and his aura was weak. He looked like he had been severely injured, so her expression became stern. Sect Master, are you injured? Yang Kai opened his swollen eyes and stared at Bian Yu Qing for a long time before he seemed to recognize her. Is it you, second manager? Bian Yu Qing was livid. Sect Master, who injured you? This subordinate will immediately organize the troops to seek justice. Yang Kai coughed lightly and waved his hand dismissively. No need. I admit defeat. The enemy is too strong. I am not their opponent. Yu Meng, that charm demon, sure was cruel. She went so far as to use a secret technique to gather yang to supplement yin to suck him dry. Thankfully, his dragon clan bloodline was powerful. Not to mention, he recently became a grand dragon. If it had been the him from the past, he would have been a withered husk by now. Even so, he couldn't help feeling weak and light-headed at this moment. It was no different from a life-or-death battle against a powerful foe. Bian Yu Qing was absolutely shocked. It had to be said that Yang Kai was a powerful master. Even when faced with a 7th-order open heaven realm master like Zuoquan Hui, he had dared to fight head-on. In the end, he finally killed his mighty enemy even though his cultivation was weaker. Just what kind of terrible monster did the sect master encounter for him to be at such a disadvantage? I can't even imagine it. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4728, Arrangements. Sect Master, are we really not going to seek revenge? Bian Yu Qing asked in confusion as this attitude was very unlike his usual attitude. Yang Kai waved aside her suggestion. It's just that I'm too weak now. I will work hard on my cultivation and get even with them with my own power one day. Only then did she nod. This subordinate understands. The two of them walked into the grand hall. After helping him into his seat, she heard him breathe a long sigh of relief. Yang Kai then asked, what happened in Voidland during the years that I was absent? Bian Yu Qing quickly replied, everything is running smoothly. The disciples are working hard on their cultivation and the Star City is prospering. He nodded, tell me about it. Hence, she immediately gave a brief summary of everything that happened in Voidland over the years. There was nothing particularly noteworthy. Back when Zuoquan Hui led Heavenly Sword Union against Voidland, Voidland had eventually managed to turn the dangers around under Yang Kai's leadership. Afterwards, news of the Star Boundaries World Tree spread throughout the 3,000 worlds and Voidland's name became famous as a result. That battle also allowed the entire universe to learn about Voidland's powerful heritage. Even Zuoquan Hui, a high-rank open heaven realm master from Thousand Cranes Paradise, had died at the hands of Voidland's lord. Prior to this incident, it could be said that high-rank open heaven realm masters were essentially invincible existences in the 3,000 worlds. It could be said that aside from the cave heavens and paradises, Voidland was now the strongest in the 3,000 worlds. In this respect, even those with countless years of inheritances could only sigh at their inferiority. Consequently, Numerous great forces had been trying to befriend Voidland so that they could visit the star boundary and enjoy a share of the pie. Unfortunately, the star boundary's attitude was very clear. Regardless of the great force, they were free to recruit talents from the star boundary, but the outcome would rely solely on their abilities. If they had the ability to appeal to the native star boundary cultivators and recruit these talents into their respective sects, then Voidland and High Heaven Palace would not interfere. However, they were not allowed to establish Tao temples in the star boundary. Each of the cave heavens and paradises had a Tao temple in the star boundary, hence, there were over 100 Tao temples spread across the 4 territories. There was simply not enough space to accommodate more. This was the policy Yang Kai decided upon before he left, and Hua Qing Sai handled the issue perfectly. The star boundary had Hua Qing Sai managing it, so there was nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, in Void Territory, the Star City was prosperous. It was now already a veritable first-class star city that was not inferior to the large-scale star cities under the command of the Cave Heavens and Paradises. Furthermore, the monthly auctions where the Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill was featured drew even more people than before. It could be said that Voidland was making a fortune just by relying on this star city. Not to mention the large number of resources that Luan Bai Feng had to send from the Black Prison every year. The current Voidland could be said to be extremely wealthy. As long as the disciples had enough contribution points, the resources they needed would definitely be supplied to them. That was why many Emperor Realm Masters had advanced into the Open Heaven realm over the past few decades. Many had even condensed their Tao seals and had begun condensing the Yin, Yang, and 5-element powers. There was no doubt that the number of Open Heaven Realm Masters in Voidland would experience an explosive wave of growth in the coming decade. So far, there are roughly 26th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters in Voidland and High Heaven Palace. There are basically no changes in this regard. On the other hand, we have 162 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, 493 4th Order Masters, and over 1,300 Open Heaven Realm Masters beneath the 4th Order Open Heaven Realm. There were nearly 2,000 Open Heaven Realm Masters in total. It was a terrifying number indeed. Ordinary second-class great forces would be considered pretty successful with 100 Open Heaven Realm Masters among their ranks. However, Voidland had over 20 times that number. That was where heritage came into play. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Has Proprietress come out of retreat? Bian Yu Qing shook her head. Bai Qi and the others have been standing guard over Madame Lan's place of retreat over the past few years, but there have been no movements so far. Yang Kai frowned slightly. The Proprietress had been in retreat for close to 100 years already, but there was still no news from her so far. There was no telling whether her attempt was successful or not. Be that as it may, it could be seen just how difficult it was for a 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Master to advance into the 7th Order Open Heaven Realm. It had to be said that the Proprietress' aptitude was very high as she had advanced directly into the 6th Order Open Heaven Realm, which made her comparable to the core disciples from the Cave Heavens and Paradises. Keep an eye on Proprietress and inform me immediately if there's any news, Yang Kai instructed. Yes. Also, I stopped by Grandmaster Ma Fan's place on my way back and received an unexpected windfall. Grandmaster Ma Fan? Bian Yu Qing pondered for a moment after hearing the name before quickly realizing something. Are you referring to Grandmaster Ma Fan of Great Evolution Paradise? Have you heard of him before? Yang Kai looked at her curiously. She smiled and answered the question. Senior Sister Hua sent a message from the star boundary. Information on the situations at High Heaven Palace and Voidland is shared among us after all. I heard that Grandmaster Ma Fan brought a group of disciples to the star boundary several dozen years ago, and Senior Sister Hua allowed them to establish a Tao temple there. There was an uproar at the time because of this incident. Why? Yang Kai frowned. She explained, that was because you instructed Senior Sister Hua to prevent any great forces aside from the Cave Heavens and Paradises from establishing a Tao temple in the star boundary before you departed back then. If things had played out equally for all parties, then nothing would have happened. The key point was that the Great Evolution Tao temple had appeared out of nowhere. Those great forces with no qualifications to establish a Tao temple were naturally dissatisfied with the situation, so they went to High Heaven Palace to argue with Senior Sister Hua. How was this matter settled in the end? In the end, the foreign affairs envoys from the cave heavens and paradises came forward to suppress the storm. Afterwards, the great forces no longer dared to question anything again. Yang Kai gently nodded. The name Great Evolution Paradise would be quite unfamiliar to most of the great forces in the 3,000 worlds. On the other hand, in the eyes of the high-rank open heaven realm masters of the cave heavens and paradises, Great Evolution Paradise used to be one of the 72 paradises in the past. It was just that the sect had fallen into decline due to certain reasons. Now that the star boundary was prosperous, Great Evolution Paradise's presence in the star boundary undoubtedly meant that it was showing signs of revival. It was only natural that the rest of the cave heavens and paradises were happy to see such a situation. Sect Master, what windfall did you receive from Grandmaster Ma Fan? Bian Yu Qing asked curiously. Yang Kai excitedly said, Great Evolution Paradise has an innate precious treasure called the Good Fortune Divine Furnace. He then told her about everything he witnessed. After listening to his explanation, Bian Yu Qing looked extremely shocked and murmured under her breath, how can there be such a mysterious object in this world? Yang Kai sighed in amazement as well. If I had not witnessed it for myself, I would not have dared to believe it either. But the cave heavens and paradises are eyeing the Good Fortune Divine Furnace. Grandmaster Ma Fan entrusted this matter to me, so I made a proposal. It won't take long before they reach a consensus among themselves and come back to discuss it with me again. At that time, they will be taking turns using the Good Fortune Divine Furnace. Voidland has to make the first move before that happens. Second Manager, quickly prepare some materials and deliver them to Great Evolution Paradise. We will use the Good Fortune Divine Furnace to produce the materials that Voidland lacks. The cave heavens and paradises were preparing for the future of the disciples, so how could Voidland do any different? A large number of talents in the 5th, 6th, and even 7th order open heaven realm were bound to emerge from the star boundary. It would be too late to figure out a solution when the time came that they needed the resources. It was better to prepare something like that as early as possible. Understood. Bian Yu Qing nodded in affirmation. Don't worry, Sect Master. Voidland has accumulated quite a number of resources over the past few decades, so I'm sure they will be enough to create a sufficient supply of higher order materials. Yang Kai nodded. Leave enough for the disciples' cultivation needs and deliver the rest to Great Evolution Paradise. Furthermore, gather some disciples gifted in artifact refining and send them along too. Opportunities to openly learn the skills of a master like this are very rare. Bian Yu Qing's eyes lit up as she asked, Grandmaster Ma Fan is accepting disciples? Yang Kai shook his head and smiled, that's not it. He is simply making plans for the future of his own disciples. As such, he intends to come out of retirement to earn some income by performing artifact refining. I have hired him as Voidland's chief artifact refiner. In the future, all the artifacts in Voidland can be left to him to refine. That's great news. Bian Yu Bing exclaimed in delight. Both the Heavenly Executioner's Sword and the Heavenly Net Umbrella that were placed in the 9 Heavenly Layers Grand Array had been refined by Grandmaster Ma Fan. That's right. Have he and the others been staying at the star boundary all this time? Yang Kai asked. Although it had not been long since he returned, he did not detect any powerful auras with his divine sense perception. None of the 6th order open heaven realm masters of Voidland were here. She answered, I was just about to tell you about this, Sect Master. The 6th order open heaven realm masters in Voidland spend most of their time in the star boundary. One of the reasons is that there are too many people gathered there. There is certainly a need for some masters to remain on guard to deter any unwanted incidents. The second reason is related to the development of the new Great Territory. The new Great Territory has an abundant stock of resources. Out of Voidland's current reserves, more than half come from the new Great Territory. In addition, Senior Sister Hua sent a message a few days ago saying that they made some sort of special discovery in the new Great Territory recently. She requested that I let you know you should head to the star boundary as soon as possible if I happen to encounter you, Sect Master. A special discovery? Yang Kai's brow lifted at those words. But Bian Yu Qing just shook her head. Senior Sister Hua did not mention any specific details about this discovery, but it should be good news. Yang Kai pondered for a moment before he nodded. Got it. It's true that I need to head to the star boundary as the cave heavens and paradises are waiting for me to discuss matters regarding the good fortune divine furnace. Unfortunately, I cannot leave right now. I will head to the star boundary once I've seen Senior Hong Hu off. Hong Hu would most likely decline to stay in Voidland for a long time. The reason she came here was mainly to bring Su Yang, the one who inherited the Phoenix Empress source, back to Four Phoenix Pavilion. The rest of the divine spirits were simply hitching a ride with her. Afterwards, Yang Kai handed Bian Yu Qing a list with many precious resources recorded on it. 3 days later, Hong Hu came to bid her farewells, and Yang Kai did not try to stop her. For the divine spirits, going to the ancestral land one day earlier would mean that they could reap the benefits one day sooner. Moreover, the current ancestral land was different from back then. With the opening of the demon sealing land, the ancestral strength had become extremely rich. Not to mention, the sacred treasures of each clan had reappeared in the world. If nothing else, the Dragon Clan would enjoy immense benefits just by going to the ancestral land and cultivating in the Crystal Palace. The group of divine spirits led by Hong Hu slowly left Void Land in an enormous ship. On the other hand, Yang Kai simply stood there and watched them off. As expected, Zhu Juyin followed along. For her, she had regained her freedom after her contract with Yang Kai to be a protector had been annulled. If not because she wanted to teach Shan Qing Luo, she would have left Voidland a long time ago. Su Yang and Shan Qing Luo had also gone along with the others. Su Yang was Hong Hu's main reason for coming. The Four Phoenix Pavilion attached great importance to her thanks to her identity as the inheritor of a past Phoenix Empress source. Shan Qing Luo had been reluctant to leave, but she could not win against Zhu Juyin, therefore, she could only set off for the ancestral land. Zhu Qing, Yang Xiao, the Dragon Clan, Xiao Xiao, Liu Yang, Zhu Feng, Luan Feng, Fan Wu, Kang Go, the many divine spirits from the star boundary, and even those with only a trace of a divine spirit bloodline also went along with Hong Hu. Their departure was a mighty sight to behold. Once they embarked on this journey, there was no saying when they would meet again. However, the divine spirits would surely have grown tremendously by the time they meet again. Marshall Peak, Chapter 4729, Open Heaven Realm Masters Everywhere. Husband, you seem a little reluctant to part ways with them. Yu Meng pressed herself against Yang Kai's body and exhaled an orchid scent in his ear. Yang Kai's calves shuddered slightly, and he answered in a trembling voice, "It's nothing. It's not like we'll never meet again." She glanced sideways at him with a smile. "Husband, why are you so nervous? It's not like this mistress will eat you." While saying so, she licked her lips with her bright red tongue. The sight made a chill spread out from the tips of his toes to the top of his head, causing all the hair on his body to stand on end. Turning his head to the side, he saw a person passing by not far away and quickly called out, "Second manager." Bian Yu Qing stopped in her tracks and turned to look in this direction. "Sect master," he asked seriously, "Second manager, did you come here because you have something to discuss with me?" She responded in confusion, "No. This subordinate was simply passing by. I am on my way to the Star City." "Second manager, you have something to discuss with me, right?" He repeated his question with a stern expression. She blinked and answered in an uncertain voice, "Yes. I have something to discuss with you." Yang Kai nodded lightly, "I see. It must be something urgent. Let's walk and talk." His figure came to her side in a flash, and he gave her a look. She then followed him in confusion. Behind them, Yu Meng gave a cold sneer, "Men. Second manager, you've worked hard all these years." While leading Bian Yu Qing forward, Yang Kai spoke up suddenly. Bian Yu Qing smiled, "Not that hard. If not for your kindness back then, Sect Master, I would have died a long time ago. I would not be standing here today. Besides, things in Void Land are wonderful now. It would have been better if the man from back then had survived until today." Even now, she could not forget the man named Ku Wu, who gave his life for her. If he was still alive today, She was certain that he would have great achievements to show for his efforts. Once you've finished dealing with the matters regarding Great Evolution Paradise, you should take some time to advance to the Open Heaven realm. Managing Void Land all this time has caused significant delays to your cultivation, Yang Kai said with some guilt. Void Land and the Star Boundary were two large territories. One was managed by head manager Hua Qing Sai while the other was managed by second manager Bian Yu Qing. They were both women who had to pick up the slack left behind by Yang Kai, who had always been an arm-flinging shopkeeper. A great force would have many affairs, both big and small, to take care of after all. As a result, their cultivation had never been particularly high. Thanks to the Star Boundary's World Tree, Hua Qing Sai had managed to condense her Dao Seal, but she had yet to advance into the Open Heaven realm before Yang Kai departed back then. There was no saying what condition she was in now. The same was true for Bian Yu Qing. Upon hearing what Yang Kai said, Bian Yu Qing felt a warmth flooding her heart and she nodded obediently. Good. I will go into retreat once I have settled the matter regarding Great Evolution Paradise. I will not disappoint you. But, Sect Master, who will manage Void Land if I go into retreat? Yang Kai asked, do you have any good candidates to recommend? To which she replied, in Voidland, aside from Senior Bai Shi whose cultivation is the highest, there are only your wives and Void Star City's Governor Mo Mai. Senior Bai Shi will never agree to manage these affairs and your wives have no such experience either, so it might not be appropriate for them to rashly take over. Why don't you leave things to Governor Mo Mai? She has managed the Star City very well over the years. Yang Kai nodded and said, I had that idea too. This is the perfect timing. Let's head to Star City to inform Mo Mai about this matter. The two of them thus went to Star City together. Mo Mai was naturally delighted to see that Yang Kai had returned. The truth was that she had already received news of his arrival. The Star City and Void Land were neighbors after all, so it was only natural that news traveled quickly between these two places. However, she was in charge of managing Void Star City, so she could not leave without notice. Yang Kai informed Mo Mai that Bian Yu Qing would soon enter retreat in order to advance to the Open Heaven realm. During that time, the management of Void Land would be temporarily handed over to her. To which she nodded in agreement. After that, he casually made a cursory check of the financial situation in Void Star City before he finally took his leave. Yang Kai did not dare to remain in Void Land for long, so the day after sending Hong Hu off, he spoke to Bian Yu Qing once more before he made his move and set off for the Star Boundary in a rush. In any case, Yang Kai had originally planned to visit the Star Boundary as soon as possible. There was still the discussion with the Cave Heavens and Paradises regarding the good fortune divine furnace after all. Not to mention, Hua Qing Sai had sent a message saying that they made an interesting discovery in the new Great Territory. It was only natural that he went there as soon as possible. It was definitely not because he was frightened. Think about it, from the day he began cultivating until now, Yang Kai had experienced countless battles of varying intensity. When had there ever been a person whom he feared? On this trip to the Star Boundary, Yang Kai traveled alone. Under the urging of space principles, he shuttled through the void and would also transfer between the universe temples from time to time. In this way, it only took him half a month to arrive at High Heaven Territory. The area around the Territory Gate was extremely lively. Ships of all shapes and sizes would frequently pass through the Territory Gate to enter High Heaven Territory. News of the Star Boundary's World Tree had spread throughout the 3,000 worlds, as well as the fact that the Cave Heavens and Paradises had taken up residence in this remote universe world and established their respective Tao temples. Naturally, various other great forces flocked to this place. Although they could not build their own Tao temple in the Star Boundary, High Heaven Palace did not restrict their activities in the Star Boundary or High Heaven Territory. Needless to say, that was provided that they did not do anything harmful. As a result, many Open Heaven Realm Masters would bring their youngest disciples with them to the Star Boundary. They would then search for a random place and settle down there, which would allow their disciples to be exposed to the light of the World Tree so that they would have greater accomplishments in the future. There were even more great forces searching for disciples with excellent aptitudes in the Star Boundary, hoping to recruit them for themselves. It could be said that there were open heaven realm masters everywhere in the star boundary. Even an unremarkable old man that could be seen in any random small village might just be a fifth or sixth order open heaven realm master. If these old men were looking around with glowing eyes, then they were surely searching for suitable disciples. Over the decades, the native cultivators in the star boundary had gradually gotten accustomed to such things. There had been some resistance when the great forces first tried to recruit people from the star boundary at the beginning. After all, the people in the star boundary only knew of High Heaven Palace and nobody had knowledge about the cave heavens and paradises. The cave heavens and paradises later established their respective Tao temples in the star boundary and, as their fame spread, the natives in the star boundary slowly relaxed their vigilance. Nowadays, it was not difficult for the cave heavens and paradises to recruit disciples. Their reputation had spread so much that the people in the star boundary were familiar with all of them. These cave heavens and paradises were known as the strongest great forces in the entire vast outer universe. The chance to join them was also a type of opportunity. However, these cave heavens and paradises had made an agreement with Yang Kai in advance. Each sect could only accept up to 5 disciples every 100 years. If the great forces below the cave heavens and paradises wanted to recruit disciples, they had to display a strong enough heritage. Even so, the young talents might be very picky about their choices. The open heaven realm masters who were responsible for recruiting disciples faced great difficulties as a result. In the past, these open heaven realm masters had always been the ones choosing their disciples, but after coming to the star boundary, the scenario was reversed instead. These little ones who had barely grown any of their body hair were not only unafraid of these powerful open heaven realm masters, but they might also look down on the sects they came from for not being good enough. Be that as it may, the open heaven realm masters had no choice but to patiently explain that their sects were not weak. They were simply not as powerful as the cave heavens and paradises. Fan Liang Peng of Heavenly Marshall Tower had a deep experience regarding such matters. Heavenly Marshall Tower could be considered a second-class great force that dominated Heavenly Marshall territory. As such, this sect was not weak in the slightest. Moreover, Fan Liang Peng himself was in the fifth order open heaven realm. Heavenly Marshall Tower immediately dispatched him to High Heaven territory to investigate the situation in the star boundary when news of the World Tree first spread. After he submitted his report on the situation in the star boundary, Heavenly Marshall Tower immediately placed great importance on this matter. Therefore, they gave him another task. He had to recruit 5 disciples with outstanding aptitude from the star boundary within 100 years. For that reason, he spent great effort and searched the star boundary for decades before he found 4 disciples. From his perspective, these 4 disciples had extraordinary aptitudes and had an opportunity to advance directly to the 6th order open heaven realm in the future. When the news came back, the entire Heavenly Marshall Tower practically jumped up and down in joy to celebrate. In the past, only the core disciples of the cave heavens and paradises were eligible to advance directly into the 6th order open heaven realm. It was impossible for second-class great forces to nurture such talents. On the other hand, there was no lack of people with such aptitudes in the star boundary. Given enough time for the 4 disciples to finish developing, the strength of Heavenly Marshall Tower would definitely be elevated. Their status would also rise like a rising tide that lifted all boats. Unfortunately, it was impossible for these 4 disciples to be brought back to Heavenly Marshall Tower for cultivation. The feedback from the World Tree was the key to the growth of these disciples. If they wanted to stimulate the potential of these disciples, then they could only allow their disciples to cultivate in the star boundary. At the very least, the 4 disciples would have to cultivate until they condensed their respective Tao seal before they could be brought back to Heavenly Marshall Tower. It was a pity that Heavenly Marshall Tower did not have its own Tao temple. Fortunately, they had a fairly good relationship with one of the paradises. Heavenly Marshall Tower's Tower Lord personally came forward to discuss the matter. Only then could they send their 4 disciples into the paradise's Tao temple to be nurtured. Needless to say, Heavenly Marshall Tower paid quite a heavy price for this. This had become a normal situation in the star boundary. Even if the sects without a Tao temple managed to recruit some disciples, they could only figure out a method to foster their disciples with the other great forces. The Tao temples of the cave heavens and paradises were one of the options, and the native great forces in the star boundary were the other one. High Heaven Palace currently fostered no less than thousands of disciples belonging to many other great forces. These disciples lived and cultivated in High Heaven Palace, and their situations weren't really any different compared to actual High Heaven Palace disciples. Similarly, the original great forces in the star boundary such as Azure Sun Temple, Serene Soul Palace, and Ahan Temple were also fostering many foreign disciples. The native great forces in the star boundary had gained enormous wealth as a result. Now that Fan Liang Peng had taken in 4 disciples, there was only one last person before his task was considered complete. Naturally, he spared no effort in his search. While passing through a small village a few days ago, he happened to encounter a child around 10 years old. He observed the child for 2 days and determined that the child had great aptitude. It was perfectly in line with all the criteria set by Heavenly Marshal Tower to accept disciples. The child was bound to have great achievements in the future. Therefore, he immediately visited the child's family and revealed his intentions. The child's parents seemed to be honest people who were very easy to talk to. They smiled quietly no matter what he said to them. When Fan Liang Peng finished his speech, the child's father finally scratched his head and responded, "Old sir, we have no objections if you want to recruit Chai Shan into your sect. It's just that Chai Shan has his own ideas. If he agrees, then you can take him away." Fan Liang Peng broke into a wide smile upon hearing those words. The child is extremely lucky to have such enlightened parent. If the parents had no objections, then what kind of opinion could a 10-year-old child have? His effort to recruit disciples was a done deal. Turning his head to the side, he looked at the child named Chai Shan with a smile. "Child, would you like to join Heavenly Marshal Tower? With your aptitude, your future achievements will surely be extraordinary. Nevertheless, you will need to obtain a good teacher and join a powerful sect. Otherwise, your aptitude will be wasted without proper guidance." You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.